Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Gig Harbor City Council study session of Thursday, June 15th, 2023. The time is 3:01 p.m. I will do a roll call. Councilmember Wook. Here. Councilmember Rodenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Starset is excused. Councilmember Likens. Maybe on the roll. Councilmember Henderson.
Here.
Councilmember Martin is excused. Councilmember Barber.
Here.
Okay, great. We have a packed agenda, as you all can see, 7 items. So what I will ask of council is to please write down and hold all questions to the end of every presentation that we have today. I will also ask that we not do our more informal round robin commenting, but if you would please raise your hands and I'll just leave it raised until I nod at you, or, I'm gonna just mark down as best I can whose hand was raised first and answer questions that way so that we can stay on track. Before we get started, I will turn it over to our city administrator, Katrina Knudsen, for an update.
Thank you, Mayor. This should be very quick. I hope you all are enjoying the weekly updates that staff provide to council. We talked in the leadership meeting, there was a suggestion from a council member that if we can make those public. And I've done some research with other city managers and administrators, and what most of them do is a city administrator or leadership update just prior to the council meeting, and then the update being included in the Monday packet for all of your council meetings. So what we're proposing to do would take the weekly update to a bi-weekly update, and then make that public on our website as well as in the council agenda packet as a city update for all of the residents and stakeholders to see. With that, staff would still receive a weekly or bi-weekly update from HR, because we would not be able to put some of the things publicly, like staff birthdays or other HR related internal items, into that update if it goes into a public forum. But we believe that that would go a long way to update not only council and staff, but the public as well.
Councilmember Roden.
Just a quick question. Does that mean then, just to clarify, then council will not be getting a weekly update? It'll be every 2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Henderson.
Well, kind of the same question. What do we end up losing? I mean, I understand putting some of that out to the public, but it was okay what we were getting before as council. Now we're going to be getting a kind of a sanitized version.
It wouldn't be sanitized, it would just not have the HR items such as birthdays that we can't put out publicly. But what I will say is that staff puts a lot of time into getting those out weekly. And so allowing that bi-weekly was a unanimous within 0.10 of a second from all of the leadership team. So it would be a more robust report every 2 weeks versus weekly. But the benefit to that would be further communication outward.
Should have said that first.
Oh. My
It's
apologies.
much easier to swallow that way.
Councilmember Wook.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea. I'm sure our community will appreciate that. So thank you.
All right, we'll try it that way. If it's not working or not, if no one's liking it, we'll think about it another way.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, first item, we have our Planning Commission appointee introductions. Robert Soltis and Loretto Cestini are here. Thank you both. I think I saw you.
Yeah.
Hello. Robert, if you would like to go first, just to stand up and give us a little introduction.
Thank you. Unexpected opportunity. It's great to be back for another 4 years. Carol and company educated me over these last 4 years, so I think I'll be able to be productive in the comp plan activity, and I look forward to working with staff and council and making this thing get done in the best possible way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Loretto?
Howdy, I think probably some folks saw me when I was back here in January, but retired from overseas. I feel like the god of constant fire truck. So, this is my first go. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you both for your willingness to serve. We're looking forward to having you. Thank you. Moving right on to our Insight Link employee survey presentation, I will acknowledge Councilmember Likens by the override. I will turn this over to our city administrator, Katrina Knudsen.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, I know that we have a short time today. Marilyn Mitchell is here from Insight Link. She has a lot of letters behind her name, one of the smartest women that I know, and has been a great partner with the city in working through our engagement survey results. She's going to present to you the results today of what we're doing well, and then a few areas that staff have indicated that we need to improve upon. And so, let's see, what else was I gonna say about that? Oh, yes, we have met with, Shannon and the mayor and I have met with each divisional team and gone through their kind of individual results, heard from them on what they think is going well, which thankfully is a lot, and then items that they think that we could improve upon, which you'll hear a lot from Marilyn. We do anticipate doing this survey regularly, so we'll be able to benchmark against these results to see in which areas we're continuing improving and which areas that need further improvement. What I will say is that the leadership team was the first to receive the results, and I think that was a very satisfying meeting to know that a lot of the work that's been going on is great. I will at first couch this, and I don't want to steal Marilyn's thunder, but this survey was taken back in September, so about 9 months, Mayor Markley being up here, and then about 3 or 4 months of me being a city administrator. So there's been a lot of work done since then. Of course, we still have room to grow. So with that, I will turn it over to Marilyn to go through the results with you. Thank you, Marilyn, for being here.
Very happy to be here, and let me share my screen here. We should have this up momentarily. Just confirm that everybody has seen the let me get it to where I want it here. It's a slideshow. Everybody's seen the title page? Are you guys seeing this?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yeah, I didn't, you kind of faded out there for a moment. Okay, I'm going to move with all deliberate speed because I know you have a tight agenda today. This, of course, represents the summary of the key findings. There is, of course, a longer report and some supporting materials beyond this, but I think you'll see very key themes as Katrina was alluding to there. Just to remind what happened, we did this survey back late last year. We invited 108 employees, 89 responded, so that's an 82% response rate. You don't have to worry too much about whether these are representative of opinion at that time. That's pretty darn close to a census rather than a sample. The way this survey is laid out, 4 big areas: commitment, culture, communications, and compensation are all touched on. And then you'll see some markings on some of these pages, both your scores, usually top 2 box out of a 5-point scale. That's often compared to an industry average of municipalities, so municipal city governments, and also to a US employee average. You'll also see green text if you're higher than you were back in 2020, red text significantly lower, and green or red arrows if you are better or worse than those norms. So if that's, I know it's pretty quick to go over that, but it gives you a sense of how you're doing both relative to your own past performance and to these industry and US employee norms. Going to jump right in to the biggest of the measures that we do, kind of our, overall job satisfaction. You guys were pretty low back in 2020. You improved substantially by late 2022. Still below what we consider the ideal target. We like to see folks get up to about 2/3 top 2 box, so 2/3 very or extremely satisfied. But you went from 28% to 45%. So while you're still below the norms, or you were at that time, you may have continued this trend and be in even better shape now. A huge improvement. And then that will be reflected in some of these more detailed topic areas and more detailed scores. The overall pattern you guys had was for real improvement. That shows up here again in the employee loyalty matrix. This is basically just a categorization of employees sort of by mindset, how satisfied they are and how long they intend to work there. So they need to stay at least 2 more years and satisfaction level. Once again, you went from a not very good score to considerably better. Still got room for improvement, but your committed loyalist, which is the group you'd like to see the biggest, went up to 41%. You still have quite a few of what we call dissatisfied compromisers. That's folks who are not planning to leave, but are not happy. You'd like to see more of that mindset shifting over into that upper left square. Not too many satisfied opportunities, a fair number of change seekers also. You'll see what's probably driving some of that. You do have still some issues around compensation and workloads. And of course, it is a great job market for folks right now. So part of that may just be that people think it's a good time to look. But like I say, you'd like to see those bottom ones get a little smaller, that upper left one continue to grow, but definitely in a good direction there. This is the one that I think was probably the most impressive, because this shows not just change in how people are experiencing this day to day, but that they feel the change, that they are seeing progress. You had a score that honestly was pretty bad in 2020, 13% saying they thought things were headed in the right direction and that their experience was improving at work. That went to 3/4. Just a great change. Of course, the most basic thing when you see a change like this, whatever you're doing, I would suggest, just keep doing it, do more of it. You want that. And this not only helps just say that the place is feeling better overall, but this says that people are noticing what's getting done to make that change. And they have faith that it's going to keep up and that things will continue to improve. Similar to this overall pattern, fulfillment of the mission, vision, and values, quite low in 2020. Kind of getting into the neighborhood of the norms by 2022. Still some ways to go. This is one, though, that we do have a high target for. We like to see about 75% on this score. The reason being, this is one you have control of. Things about pay, benefits, other things like that cost money, or where you're battered by market forces, COVID, all sorts of things like that, you don't control. But it should feel, especially in a mission-driven organization like a municipality, municipal government, you are your mission. And if the employees think you're not quite fulfilling it, that's an issue. This score has a lot of room to grow, but headed in the right direction. Fulfillment of the various vision components. I'm not going to go into each of these, but as you can see, some are quite a bit more strongly certain by employees that you are fulfilling these. So you notice that the environmental sustainability and natural beauty pretty strong. Some of the others have a little further go, sustainable for future public services, fostering a healthy organization. Those have a little more room for getting a little more positive sort of views. This is one I do want to draw your attention to. You have a really high score on continually having more work than you can finish. You look down there, it's 46% of people saying that they can't get their work done. This may be one of the things that's driving some of those mindsets we saw a few slides ago with the either change seeking or dissatisfied compromise. Obviously, this is a little bit of a counterbalance to that positive mood we could see on some of the other scores. So this one, you probably either need to look at how work is allocated, whether there can be some efficiencies created to this, or whether you just need more people in some of the departments and work groups, because that kind of score will drive some turnover. Similarly, work profile, what it's like to work there. You see a lot of places where you got better. You're doing pretty well, but some of the ones like the work is more enjoyable, respected. One that you don't necessarily want to see the score going repetitive. But these overall, you're getting pretty decent territory in terms of how it's feeling to work there. And that's, of course, consistent with that improvement in seeing things getting better. Similarly, satisfaction profile, how satisfied employees are with certain aspects of the workplace. A number of these are at or above the norms now. Some of them also improved significantly over the 2-year period between the prior survey and this one. So you can see, one of the ones here, opportunity to make suggestions, be involved in your work. That one almost doubled. That is just great to see, because people, especially once again, in a mission-driven organization, do want to feel that they can affect their workplace, affect their work outcomes, and are listened to. That, there's a confidence in leadership that that people know what they're doing, and when they share ideas and thoughts and suggestions, they get a fair hearing, and if they're good, get used, and if they're not, get at least an explanation why not. The rest of the satisfaction profile, similar pattern pertains, scores mostly in a good territory relative to the norms, and a lot of scores improved significantly over the last time. I know it's a big jump down there toward the bottom of that group of items on training and development, going from 12%, which is pretty bad, to 32%. Still room to improve there. But similarly, overall work environment from 14% to 46%. Level of reward and recognition from 11 to 32. These are huge for a 2-year amount of change. Now, one that I wouldn't always include in a summary like this, but I felt I should because it was poor before, and this is one of the few that stayed poor. It's slightly improved, but you can see well below the norms, and only 12% saying they're very extremely satisfied with performance review program. This once again can feed into some of those more negative mindsets like dissatisfied compromise or even change seeking. A good performance improvement program doesn't just help people do their jobs well, it also gives them confidence that their good work is being noticed, that they are working on the right kinds of things, and that therefore, especially when you see that extra effort that was getting put in there on the workloads, that it's noticed, and that things are fair in all ways. So this one would be one of the ones that if I was starting to think about stuff to fix, this would make my to-do list. Not surprisingly, I won't belabor this, but the individual components of the performance review are not doing great scores either. So you can see that quite a few of them have room for some change. Now, one that I don't think we asked last time, hang on a second here, I'm trying to get the grid so I can see better what's going on here. The leadership effectiveness. You didn't ask this in 2020, although it's one that we have norms for. It's kind of interesting to me to think about what these scores might have looked like in 2020, but in 2022, they were pretty darn good. Here you're exceeding the norms. So this often goes along with that improvement, that positive momentum, because there has to be faith both ways, faith in leaders and correspondingly employees thinking that leaders have faith in them. And you get this kind of nice effectiveness scores when you get that. Now, I don't know how many of you remember the survey itself. It had quite a number of batteries that focus on particular elements of that 4 C's that I mentioned at the beginning of the talk, and where we asked people how important certain aspects of their workplace were, and then in another question, how well the organization is doing. And from that, we get a gap analysis. And that's what this one shows. This is for the corporate culture, or in this case, the organizational culture. And what you want to see is lots of green bars, not too many blue, and ideally none of the red. If you look over at the gaps you had in 2020, we pretty much had at that time more or less a sea of red. It has gotten substantially better. There are scores that definitely need to have gaps getting a little smaller still. The ones where the gaps are the biggest, where the difference between importance and performance is still quite large, getting into that critical gap red bar range. Holding people accountable for their conduct and performance. I suspect that probably isn't equal across all departments, but I would definitely look at what's driving that. Employee loyalty, being valued and rewarded. Feeling that people primarily get ahead based on the merits of their work, and that conflicts are resolved effectively. So in terms of culture, those are the ones where you would like to push these gaps further, I guarantee you, if you push those gaps further, some of the others will move, will narrow as well. Hold on a second. I accidentally touched something here that I didn't mean to touch. Next, looking at commitment. This is kind of our big picture measures of commitment, and they go both ways. There's one, how committed you feel to the city of Gig Harbor, and then how much you feel the city of Gig Harbor values you and is committed to you as an employee. Both of these improved, but one made a huge improvement. The two Gig Harbor was already near the norms. So even when you're having maybe a little more troubled environment 2 years ago, people still felt the love for Gig Harbor. But that has increased. You've got 2/3 now saying they feel very or extremely committed to the city. Great score and a great improvement. But you look at the other one, it really changed. In 2020, the degree to which employees felt the city was committed to them as an employee was quite low. Only 16% in that top 2-box score, less than half of the norm, basically. And now you're above the norms and basically above the city norm and right at the US norm on this. Just a huge increase. And once again, kind of part of that larger pattern of things feeling better for employees there. Not surprisingly, with that positive change in the commitment scores, you have pretty minor issues in terms of the gap analysis on the commitment evaluator items. You've only got a 2 where we would consider the gap to be something you'd want to work on. One is career goals being satisfied at the organization, and the other one is feeling motivated to do your work well. And that just barely hits our score difference for a blue bar. Career goals being satisfied, I know can be challenging at an organization that's not gigantic. There's not always obvious career steps up for everybody. But these all improved hugely over 2020. And I would look at what you are doing in terms of even where there might not be room for career advancement per se in terms of promotion, at least sort of career development for employees to continue to take that gap down a little bit more. Communications was another area that was particularly vexed last time. As you can see, the norms are not all that high on this score. Communication is tough for every organization, and getting people to be really satisfied for it is a high bar everywhere. But you were in the doldrums last time, only 8% saying they were highly satisfied. That has now moved up to 34%, so it's above the municipal norm a bit, just a bit below the US norm. So whatever changes you have been making, whether that's frequency, channels, content, or the two-wayness of communications, it has improved substantially. Keep doing whatever you're doing there and get into really great territory. Accordingly, with the improvement there, you still have some gaps, but they're nothing like the ones you had in 2020. As you can see, in 2020, you had gaps that were like 76%, 85 points, 80 points on some of these. So there's still a little room to improve. Getting the various department heads to listen and respond to employee ideas, even though that is something that got better on culture, it's got room for a little bit more. Feeling free to voice opinions at work has a little room. And then communicating decisions to employees that are affected by the decisions effectively and efficiently can also get a little better. Compensation, kind of mentioned this as in passing there a minute ago on one of the others. This is an area where you weren't doing all as bad as on some others last time, and it has fallen. It's one of the rare ones where you guys have gone down. Obviously, you know better than me what might be driving this. There are, of course, those external forces of a hot job market, rising pay in many areas that some of your employees might be qualified for. But usually when it's as low as this, there are other issues, not just sheer amounts of pay, but often sometimes people are concerned about fairness in some sense or another, because that will drive satisfaction with pay down almost as much as the actual amounts will. But in any event, this is probably, I'll say, I would bet money this is one of the factors that is producing the number of change seekers and dissatisfied compromisers we saw in the employee loyalty matrix. So you want to get a hold on this. It's especially important too. We also saw that issue of not having enough time to get the work done. If you feel overworked and you also feel underpaid, that is a recipe for people to walk. And not surprising with that low score on the on satisfaction with compensation, this is the one that looks the worst in terms of that importance performance gap analysis. You are better than you were before on several of these, but still have a long ways to go. And the issues are big ones. Being confident that the organization wants them to have competitive wages, that you are indeed paid fairly compared to others in similar organizations, and that pay is directly related to job performance. And that's another one that supports my thought that a bit of a fairness issue might be wound in there, as well as the absolute amounts of pay. Almost always when satisfaction with pay is low, it pulls satisfaction with benefits down too. You were pretty much at the norms before, you're a little below now. So I'm not sure whether it is just that halo effect from satisfaction with the pay, or whether you have made some changes that in the benefits that people didn't like, but you did slide a bit on that. Like I say, that's against your other pattern. And just one other, this is fighting into history now, but you had gotten kind of a poor score on how you handled COVID. At least as of late last year, that had improved. So whether changes had occurred and how you handled it, or whether it was just partly retrospective by then feeling better about it, it did get better. Just to summarize this, because I know you guys may have a few questions for me. Key takeaways. First off, progress is not equal everywhere. You see some great gains in areas, modest improvements in others, a lot above or at the norms with room for further improvement. A lot of the big picture measurements have really gotten better. Overall job satisfaction still lags the norms a bit and the target, but way up from where it was. That employee loyalty matrix also way up, but still a lot of those change seekers. Key drivers of job satisfaction, more improvement is needed there on hearing some of these voices and opinions in a fair and effective manner, making sure they feel that the city's committed to them. That had gained, but has lots of room to go. And fairness in terms of pay and benefits and consistent application of policies. And then of course, training and career development. That huge increase that we mentioned in workplace progress from 13 to 76, that's about as big a gap as or biggest change as I can recall seeing. And then fulfilling the mission, vision, and values more than doubled. But that one is one where you want to keep that momentum going and have that get even further up. Kind of as we touched along the way, some areas you might want to consider focusing on as you look at whatever change initiatives you might have. Addressing compensation and the things that surround it, especially this notion of overwork, burnout, maybe not being adequately staffed. Strengthening the sense of mutual commitment, even though employees did get both more committed to you and you guys and perceive the city as more committed to them, there was still a pretty big gap between those two scores. So look for chances to make sure they know you care about them. They know you're committed to them, their careers, their well-being. And then striving toward greater fairness. We did hear some in the written comments, things about, wanting consistent application of policies across everything. That shows up in these hard scores as well. Training opportunities, career development, advancement to, relate to that gap we saw on that item. Ensuring that everyone at all levels held accountable for their conduct and performance. And of course, we always hear employees wanting to eliminate any form of bias, discrimination, or especially favoritism in the workplace. So with that fairly breathless presentation, do you have any questions for me or need clarification on any things we've shown here?
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Marilyn. It was very good and a whole lot of data there to digest. I had a couple questions. One is on the four groups of people elected: the satisfied compromisers, the change seekers, and the other two. Did you see clusterings of any one of those groups in just certain areas, or was that spread all the way across the board? And then my second comment.
I don't have the heat map right in front of me, but normally a pattern like this, you will see some departments, a lot happier than others. And I know that that was true kind of overall in your scores. So, but yes, there was improvement pretty much everywhere. But some folks definitely got better more than others did. And so, yeah, there are some departmental differences in the distributions here.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful and I'm thrilled to see the changes in the numbers. My question is probably more for City Administrator Knudsen and Shannon Constanti is, will you be coming back to us with what you're doing internally to try to correct some of the less than stellar numbers?
Following Marilyn's presentation, I have some remarks.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Runberg.
I have a couple questions and then some comments. As you know, this is very dear to my heart. The industry norm, I guess you answered this question. You talked about industry norms, but then you went on to say municipal norms. So I'm guessing that these norms are considered municipal across the board.
Yeah, the one that says industry norms is a norm for local or municipal, different places categorize themselves, but city, local, or municipal governments. The US norm is against all US employees across all industries and types of organizations.
The change seekers, do you attribute any of that to generational ideas that younger job workers don't have the loyalty that older workers have? Or is that?
I've heard that speculated, and it's probably more not so much the loyalty issues that people at the beginnings of their career often expect to change a bit more. I don't think it's not just this generational difference as much as if you have a lot of young people, they may be making a first step where they expect to acquire skills and knowledge and then in some sense outgrow that organization or take that skills and knowledge either into their own business, their own activity, or a bigger organization, or all kinds of things. It would be possible. I don't know if, Katrina, do you recall, do we have age as one of the things we can cut your data by? No. Okay, then we couldn't do that analysis for you. Sometimes, especially for like our big corporate organizations, we will attach your service data or age data or other demographics, and then we can cut along those lines.
We did not include age because it was a identifying factor with different meetings.
Exactly. Yeah.
Easily find out people.
Then my other comments are, I really don't like waiting 9 months to get this information. And I'll tell you why. Things have improved so quickly that some of the saying isn't even valid anymore. I know we've had union contracts that have been signed, pay has increased, people are happier, but here we're telling the public and everybody in this room that things are not good. And I don't think we're getting credit in this presentation for everything that's happened since this survey was taken. I think that as far as like performance reviews, I think, our city administrator, one of the main topics of her master's thesis was performance reviews. That's got to have improved, and we don't know that in this presentation. The perceived workload, I know that's being worked. We've made, because things change so quickly, and have continued since this survey was taken. All that data, I don't think is valid today as it was 9 months ago, and that upsets me because I'm the one that asked for this in the first place. And 9 months later, I get the results. I don't like that. I think we should do better next.
Thank you. Councilmember Wood?
I think that's all.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you, Marilyn. This is a really good presentation, and golly, it's quite a different presentation from the one we had in 2020. So I'm really happy to see that. So thanks for all these questions. on the leadership effectiveness question that was able to be asked this time. I believe it was not able to be asked the last time because the survey was not allowed to break it down into administration, department directors or supervisors. They had to be lumped together because of the sampling. They thought it would be too small. And so they would call attention to certain people there. So I do have a couple other questions. On the written comments that were submitted this time, are they included in the summary that you presented as the last slide?
Councilmember Wu, we will need to talk with our attorney Sophia maybe on that question.
Okay. Are there less written comments this time than there were last
We
time?
will need to talk with our attorney Sophia maybe on that.
Okay, so I will say that I am also really happy to see the one slide that says that people are allowed to learn from their mistakes rather than being reprimanded. That was a big improvement, and I know that was a concern from a lot of our employees, and wow, what a good thing that was to see. I'm still concerned over the workload that was perceived 9 months ago, and I hope it's gotten better, and I hope we pay attention to that going forward. But golly, this was such a better report this time than we have seen before. So the summary I thought was really good, and I appreciate this presentation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. And it's certainly a lot easier to present these when it goes this direction than the one we had 2 years ago.
Yes, totally.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilmember Likens?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Marilyn. That was a great presentation. I was also going to comment, and Councilmember Rodenberg brought up about the timing of this survey with union negotiations, because I know are on contracts, because there's been some adjustments with or in the works of, I know the police union.
Yes, I'm gonna allow City Administrator Knudsen to give her remarks, because it might answer some questions of council.
That would be terrific. I just want to say kudos though, because this shows a direction. And I would love to see this on an annual basis. If we could, I know a lot of corporations, the one I work for, we do it every year.
Yes, and we agree that receiving input, and it's not always easy for every leader to see what the feedback is. But ultimately, the feedback from those that we're serving is how we're gonna know what we're doing well and where we need to improve. So I am not afraid of that, and neither is the leadership team or the mayor. In regard to the time it took, so we're a relatively new administration. We've been spending I'm almost a year formally in this role, and a lot of that has been spent meeting with many people over many different items. So I do apologize if this took longer to get here. I will say that because of that time, when we take an employee survey, we were going to come right to you with these results. It didn't seem right to me, because this is the employees and they're talking to their bosses, which are sitting right here. And so we received the results, and there are employees here that were in those meetings. We wanted to be able to sit down with them, and that didn't happen quickly. So we were finally able to meet with the full police force about 6 weeks ago. And so once we had that completed, we felt that it was fair to the employees to bring this forward. In typical jurisdictions that have not had a significant morale issue, the survey goes to administration, and then we provide general outputs to the council in terms of the effectiveness. With our attorney, it's not normal for the results to go to council, because you are in charge of policy and budget, and we are in charge of essentially day-to-day operations. So with those things, I just wanted to outlay that. Councilmember Rodenberg, I know that your point is well taken, and we will be more timely in the future. But what I will say also is, having been in the role and knowing everything that's gone into this, we will do a better job of prepping a schedule rollout next time. But in my opinion, giving it to the staff first was the right thing to do, because we wanted to show them that we care and that we're doing something about it. this presentation with Marilyn, and we've talked a number of times, and she said it, and so I don't want there to be, this is a sad result. She has not seen, she has not seen organizational jumps like this in her career.
Oh, yeah,
So this is a really good news story
yeah.
for our organization and our city, and the citizens are feeling it, the staff are feeling it. Do we have areas to improve? Absolutely, and we always will. We're not going to rest on those laurels. What I will say is, in terms of mission, vision, and values, what we found from the staff, they didn't know what the strategic plan goals were. It's a newly adopted document. So I've asked the department heads to talk about the strategic plan goals with their department and what that means to each employee working within those departments. The city had a mission statement. It was removed by the previous mayor. So when we're asking staff, are we meeting the mission? Their answer was, we don't know what that is. And so we're just undertaking, and we actually, staff was able to vote on, and we have a mission statement now. They don't exactly know what it is because it's going to roll out at our next all staff. But we're working on that. The too much work. That was a direct result of the budget that we went forward with council. There was too much work in certain parts of the organization. You've allowed us to hire 4 more police officers. You've allowed us to go for an NPDS coordinator, and some additional other staff in public works, an additional finance, senior accountant in the finance department. So staff are feeling that. And to Councilmember Rodenberg's point, some of these things I think will be dramatically different the next time that we take the survey. You'll note in there, and as is, I think, to be expected with a younger workforce, and especially after COVID, many staff are expecting like more different flexible schedules and telework options than what the city has traditionally offered. The leadership team, we've been working on a new policy that will be rolling out soon through HR for flexible schedules and telework. And also potentially closing City Hall on Fridays with remote appointments only to allow folks to be teleworking on Fridays. So those are things that will be coming forward. Compensation is a biggie. Councilmember Likens, you're correct. We went through the police negotiations and that had an 8.5% 1-year increase over the top. We are right in the middle. We're actually getting ready to finish our job description project. They may be surprised to know that some positions at the city did not have a job description. They are getting one for the first time. And when we talk about accountability and staff wanting accountability, a director supervisor cannot hold people accountable if there's not a job description to hold them to. So we are at the very basic level with that process. Those are going to be completed and shown with all of the unions, and so that is moving forward. Once that's completed and we have job descriptions for everyone, we can take those job descriptions to the market and compare them for compensation in advance of the 2 other union contracts that are coming up later this year. So we do anticipate the compensation getting much better. We sure hope it is on the police side. However, on the supervisory and employee unions, that contract will be settled by the end of the year. So depending on when the next survey is taken, compensation still may be a lagging factor. For performance management, you are absolutely correct. That was part of the reason why I chose that for my thesis of my master's program, and we are planning to, I am planning to present that not only to the leadership team, but to council with marked items that we do need to improve. Our performance system, as the HR director will say, is antiquated and old. And we need to get better so that we can show people how they can improve organizationally, what they've done well, and what their plan is for the future. We talked about accountability for performance. We've been talking about that with the leadership team. People see somebody getting away with something and then they don't get away with it. That is a surefire way to have problems. And so we know that that was happening. The leadership team has stepped up to that role, and they have been leaning in those ways. And we think that those problems have greatly resolved. In regard to compensation, Councilmember Rodenberg alluded to this a little bit. In Maryland, I think we didn't ask age in the survey, but after meeting with all the teams, our younger folks are looking at a total compensation. That's what some of the private market has done, is looked at total compensation, where we pay very heavy on benefits
Mhm.
The younger folks are asking to have more, less benefits, more pay. And then our more senior employees very much are relying on benefits. And so I expect for that to be a big discussion in union negotiations, total compensation versus how it's always been done. And again, we're open to that, obviously, with council coming along for the ride with that. Training and development, it is not only a recommendation, but a requirement. We've added it into the budgets. Everybody is taking training, and it's really good to see. I believe those are the final remarks. I do want to say, though, we have room to grow, but I'm super proud of what we've all done together, and council, you are a part of it too. So while the leadership team and Tracy and I sit here proud of this, you are the companion to us on the other side of the tree branch. And we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your support as well, noting that you make hold the purse strings, so to speak. So thank you for your support of us and support of the employees. Makes it not only more fun, but makes it a lot easier and better organizationally.
Thank you, Katrina. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you folks for doing what you're doing and continuing. Like Lee said, this is a snapshot in time, and it was roughly 9 months ago. And I know that just being part of what we've been doing, I know there will be great changes in this later on in some of the areas that were in red or the blue. So I want to thank you guys, and I want to thank our directors too for providing the mentoring and the guidance, which is also just as important because they're getting closer to the workers, and that's where the rubber hits the road.
Thank you. Councilmember Likens.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to also congratulate you and in just your presentation right now, just how committed and how hard you're working. And it shows as a healthcare provider to see that culture of fear where people are afraid to speak up and be human and they've made a mistake. That is huge. It's huge in our industry because if we're afraid to say we made a mistake, lives can be lost. So it's very, very important to have process and to say, if I messed up, I have to feel safe in this and we have to move forward. And so, and that gets to tag on to the mentoring, especially with new employees, young employees, to let them know, okay, next time it's not gonna happen on your watch. Just so proud of that. That's huge. That's huge.
And we don't get to council's work, strategic plan of innovation and process improvements without the employees being able to try. And then if it fails, try something different. So I really appreciate that comment.
Fail harder next.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fail again.
That's right. Councilmember Wood.
Yes, so as one of the council members that was here 4 years ago and then sat through this in 2020, this is hugely positive report. And no matter when it was taken, it's hugely positive. And it only came about through lots of work from our entire staff, all of our employees willing to go along with it, and our staff willing to be the leaders that we've needed, and to have a mayor who is willing to walk her talk and appreciate that that everyone needs a little help and everyone needs another chance, and to take that strong stance in favor of our employees. So thanks to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, council, so much. Okay, Marilyn, thank you so much.
Okay, well, well, thank you very much. And of course, if there are later questions, feel free to let us know. We're always happy to help with anything we can.
Great. Thank you again.
All right.
Okay. Moving on to our third item, our climate action plan update. And this report is from our senior planner, Roxy Robles. How are you?
I'm great. Great.
I'm good.
Roxy got to be at the farmer's market today with a baby kangaroo.
Oh.
I'm so amazed how fast that picture got around.
I know. We turned around and Jeff was there going, there's a kangaroo.
Still there?
There you go. Okay. Sorry, I sidetracked you.
I'm really pleased to introduce our consulting team from Cascadia Consulting. They've been working really diligently on all of the analysis and drafting strategies and goals for this climate action plan. We have Alyssa Rodriguez with us. She is the incredible project manager. We have Jenna Decker, who completed our greenhouse gas emissions analysis. So anything technical, which I'm sure you're gonna have technical questions at the end of their presentation, please. You can direct them towards Jenna. And then of course we have Gretchen Muller, the director of Cascadia Consulting. So welcome all three of you. Thank you so much for the work you've been doing.
Great, thanks so much for having us here. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So we are going to go ahead and get started. And I believe Roxanne is going to formally kick us off.
Okay. So, by talking about the plan. I'll introduce you. So yeah, just a note that this is going to be a more high level kind of description of both the process of the plan, how we move through the different sections of it, and then also a higher level view of our strategies and actions. We're going to take any thoughts, we want to make sure that if there's any huge red flags from this presentation from you all that we can course correct. And then take any refinements back to Planning Commission and the Climate Change Comprehensive Plan Amendment Committee. And then continue to refine the plan and then hopefully get this back to you in its final draft form in a few months. Great.
Well, thank you, Roxanne. And as Roxanne already mentioned, this is the project team, and you've got 3 of us here today from Cascadia that you'll be hearing from. And with that, I'm going to just go ahead and get us started. I know time is of the essence this afternoon. So what is a climate action plan? A climate action plan, or CAP as we call it, it serves as a roadmap for climate actions that manage climate change impacts and risks, reduces emissions, and works alongside the community to address climate issues that are impacting your community. So that's what we've worked with you all on for the last few months here. And we're already seeing the impacts of climate change, and many of these things you likely all have had lived experiences and been impacted by them. So here in the Puget Sound and around the country, we see more frequent severe storm events that have led to increased flooding, as well as heat waves like the one we experienced just a couple of summers ago. More wildfires, not wildflowers, that would be better. A lot of smoke as well. And of course, with Gig Harbor's location, concerns about sea level rise, about high tides and storm surges. So your CAP will help to address these climate impacts both globally as well as locally. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alyssa.
Awesome, great, thank you. So I'm just going to dive right in to talk about how we ended up with the plan that we have today. So we can go to the next slide, please. So there are 4 key components of this climate action plan. So the first one is the greenhouse gas emissions inventory and targets, which help us see where emissions are coming from and what our goals should be for reducing them. There's the focus areas, strategies, and actions, which really are like the meat of the plan, and it's how we plan to meet those reduction targets. And then there's community engagement elements, so how and when we engage the Gig Harbor community, what feedback the community gave, and then how we incorporated their input. And lastly is the implementation plan and matrix, which is where we build out the next steps to really take these actions off paper and make sure that this plan is actionable at the end of this process. So next slide, please. So this is, again, a high-level summary of what we did. Of course, not everything is here on these couple of bullets, but so we got started back in January. And so it's kind of the 3 main phases here, coordinating with the seasons, but we started back in January by building out an extensive list of potential actions, which we pulled from a policy scan of state and regional efforts, plans, guidelines, mandates, as well as internal Gig Harbor plans and policies. We also conducted a greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which Jenna will do a deeper dive here in a second. And then we also launched a community survey to gather input on like types of actions and kind of the focus area visions from the Gig Harbor community. Next in spring, oops, sorry, one step back. In spring, we were kind of drafting the plan essentially while we were hosting the community workshop. We also hosted a city staff implementation workshop. And then we summarized all that feedback, incorporated them into the plans. And then here we are already in summer, hard to believe, that we're just gonna share kind of the overview today, but we'll collect final staff feedback and any feedback from you all and revise. And then, as Roxanne mentioned, come back to you all in a couple months with a final plan. So next slide, which I actually am now going to pass it over to Jenna.
Great, thank you, Alyssa. Gretchen, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. So what is a greenhouse gas inventory? A greenhouse gas inventory is a report that quantifies emissions occurring within a city's geographic boundaries from greenhouse gas emitting activities, such as driving, heating, and cooling homes and disposing of waste. As said, these are emissions that are occurring within the city's geographic boundaries. So that means that these emissions account for those from visitors, residents, workers, anyone within the boundaries of Gig Harbor. A greenhouse gas inventory is a key starting point in a climate action planning process because you can't manage what you're not measuring. A greenhouse gas inventory's results inform the city where its highest emitting sources are, which then informs where emissions reduction strategies should be focused. And then additionally, in the future, when emissions reduction strategies from a climate action plan have been implemented, an updated greenhouse gas inventory can be performed to track the progress on the success of implemented strategies and actions. Next slide, please. So this slide right here presents an overview of Gig Harbor's 2019 emissions profile. And I just want to start this out by saying that this emissions profile is very typical of one that we see within most communities, with transportation and energy use accounting for the vast majority of emissions. I'm going to go ahead and provide a quick high-level overview of these results, just noting that more detail will be available within the climate action plan. And within the climate action plan, we also have the greenhouse gas inventory memo attached as an appendix item to really get into the nitty-gritty details even more. But just to go over it high level real quick, transportation accounted for 51% of Gig Harbor's emissions, making it the largest contributor. Buildings and energy accounted for 29% of Gig Harbor's emissions, making it the second largest contributor. And then land use, refrigerants, solid waste, and wastewater encompass the rest of those emissions accounted for, with land use accounting for 13%, refrigerants 7%, and then solid waste and wastewater combined account for 0.1% of those emissions. The next slide, please, Gretchen. And then with those inventory results, we were able to come up with these emissions reductions targets. So we identified these using those results, but also looked at Pierce County's emissions reduction targets to kind of and adjusted them to what was feasible for Gig Harbor. So I'll just go ahead and read these off real quick. We have reducing emissions 45% by 2030, 70% by 2040, and 95% by 2050. Electrifying 100% of new buildings by 2030 and 100% of existing buildings by 2050. Electrifying passenger, freight, and service vehicles 100% by 2050. Reducing passenger vehicle miles traveled per capita 10% by 2030 and 25% by 2050. Increasing participation in community programs focused on climate resilience by 2050.
diverting recyclable and compostable materials 50% by 2030 and 95% by 2050. Maintaining tree cover and reducing tree loss 50% by 2030 and 102% by 2050. And I just want to note here that this means that Gig Harbor would need to gain 2% of tree cover by 2050, which is why it's at 102%. Protecting land carbon sinks 100% by 2030. And lastly, serve all Gig Harbor's population by climate emergency response services and departments by 2030. Next slide, please. And I will go ahead and pass it back to Alyssa.
Great, thank you. We can go to the next slide. So we planned for 3 main phases of community engagement and also staff engagement listed here on this with this graphic. So the first phase in the blue is really just focusing, like we focused on raising the profile of the project. So that was mainly, you know, planning what activities we wanted to do, developing materials, and then trying to understand like what the city wanted to gather from community input. Phase 2 is really the bulk of the public facing activities that we did, which were a online survey and a workshop. The survey was published via city newsletter and the public or the project webpage, and was open for about 3 weeks in March. And we had 117 responses. And the workshop was an online community meeting held on a Wednesday in March as well. And that was on Zoom, and we had around 20 community members at that meeting. And then phase 3, we had the biggest engagement there was with the staff implementation workshop. And we reflected that back to the staff and also worked with them on the draft actions as well. And so there will be other planning commission meetings and a city council meeting forthcoming. So we can go to the next slide. So here are just some of the key themes that we heard from both and most of the engagement activities that we did. So the first one is that Gig Harbor community members are informed and motivated to take climate action. We saw a lot of people were already pretty well versed about climate action coming to the workshop with, you know, ready to dive in about sea level rise. So overall, the community is very energized, I would say, about taking action, and definitely brought forth their concerns and their priorities. Overall, there was more of a support for actions that leaned more to like education and incentives for climate action versus regulation and mandates. There was also a lot of support for like partnerships for collective action, both within, you know, Pierce County, also local organizations, schools, and kind of other regional entities to have a greater impact. And then this came up a couple times of the community members are like looking to the city to provide leadership, guidance, and resources, both in terms of, I think that kind of leads back to the education and incentives theme, looking to the city just for where to get started on their climate action. Some other priorities that we heard, just kind of more topically, were about increasing resilience to climate change impacts, big supporters of using renewable energy and wanting to dispose sustainably, lots of support for increasing parks and restoration areas, and increasing walkability and bike-friendly infrastructure within the city. And as I mentioned, top concerns included sea level rise impacts on city infrastructure and preventing the loss of habitat and species. Another one I think we can all relate to as we are heading into summer are impacts from wildfires and smoke and air quality. Plastic pollution was also a top concern. And then we also heard some sorry, I heard a little feedback there. That might have been me though. Some concerns for like access for all to participate in climate action, specifically calling out cost barriers for people to participate. And so with that, we can go to the next slide. And so now I'm just going to dive into the focus areas, strategies, and actions, which are the bulk of the plan. So next slide. So just a kind of brief overview of how we ended up with the strategies and actions. Again, just an overview. So we did start with a policy scan, like I mentioned earlier, of current city efforts, state and regional requirements plans. And this led to a large initial list of potential actions and like rationale for why we should include them or not. And this list got further whittled down throughout the process to end up with the list that we have today. So once we had that initial list, the focus areas started to emerge. They also mirrored the greenhouse gas inventory because, again, you want to address where the emissions are coming from. And so we just, continued to, so we defined the focus areas, gave them some goals, and then we developed the strategies within for the actions. Step 3, continue to refine and revise based on community feedback. And then additionally, step 4, at the staff implementation workshop, we had some edits and additional considerations because yes, the staff know best what's going on. So we had some a final round of feedback there. And then this graphic, I wanted to include because I think it helps kind of look at what types of actions we included, which in this plan, we have both mitigation actions and adaptation actions. So mitigation actions address the cause of climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing carbon sinks, which are like forests, wetlands, which store greenhouse gas emissions. And adaptation actions address and manage the impacts of climate change by protecting and building resilience for vulnerable social and biological systems. And both are necessary for a sustainable and resilient future. So you can see kind of here within this graphic what types of actions fall within each of those categories. And again, this cap has both. So next slide, please. I feel like I just threw out a whole bunch of jargony words, so this graphic is helpful to understand how they all fit together. So on the left column here, we have the focus areas, which we have 6 of, which I will, on the next slide, I'll dive into all of those. So there's 6 focus areas, and within each of those, we have a high level goal, which is top here of the outcome that we hope to achieve. And then the targets and metrics, which Jenna already shared, are the measurable emissions values or milestones that we are planning to reach. And, the indicators representing completed goals and actions. So, what we plan to reduce by essentially. The strategies are like the framework for meeting that. And then the actions are the foundation of the plan, really. It's what they're the specific levers, policies, and initiatives that are the steps to meet all of the things above here in this graphic. So next slide, I will introduce our 6 focus areas. So the first one is cross-cutting and municipal, which mainly focuses on Gig Harbor, the city of Gig Harbor, the entity, and then buildings and energy, transportation, consumption and disposal, natural systems, and community resilience. And so now I'm just going to walk through, again, very high level. We would need like 4 hours to dive into everything in the plan. So this is just I'll just highlight the goals, the strategies, and some key actions within each of those. And you all will get to see them in full detail in the actual plan. So you can go to the next slide. So our first one is cross-cutting and municipal. So the goal is to reduce community and municipal emissions through internal city policies and initiatives and by encouraging community members and city staff to participate in local climate action. So within that focus area, our strategies are engage the community in climate action, reduce the emissions from municipal operations, integrate climate change into city planning and decision-making, and increase participation in regional and local climate outreach and advocacy. So some key actions within that include climate education and awareness, climate considerations in government, climate and sustainability in schools, and then, some more like municipal vehicle electrification, municipal solar installation, collaboration with local tribes, city carpool. So those are just a few. I was just kind of listing there. So we can go to the next slide. We have buildings and energy. So the goal is to reduce building emissions through energy efficiency, building electrification, and renewable energy. So we have two main strategies there, and it's to transition to renewable building energy and reduce energy use in new and existing buildings. Some key actions within that are like heat pump program expansion, green power promotion, energy efficiency retrofits, solar energy grid resiliency, and community solar projects. So we can go to the next slide. Transportation. The goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transportation by expanding the use of electric vehicles, increasing multimodal transportation options, and improving cycling and pedestrian infrastructure. So transition to non-fossil fuel vehicles and equipment, reduce vehicle travel, and reduce aviation emissions. And so within that, we have kind of, sorry, I have the wrong thing up, but improving bicycle infrastructure, encouraging, reducing single vehicle transportation. And the other one I wanted to highlight was like community electric vehicle education. Oh, and my favorite one was the electric trolley for the Gig Harbor Summer Trolley. So the next slide, please, is consumption and disposal. Reduce community waste and greenhouse gas emissions generated from consuming and disposing of goods and materials. So reduce waste generation and divert waste from landfills, produce and consume food sustainably. So this one, we have recycling requirements in new buildings, garden access and creation, food waste reduction plan, and then phase in mandatory composting recycling requirements. Okay, we're on the home stretch here. Next slide, please. We have natural systems. The goal is to foster climate resilient natural landscape by conserving water resources and preserving and expanding vital habitats, ecosystems, and natural resources. So increase urban tree canopy and expand community green spaces, promote water conservation and enhance water system resiliency, protect and restore valuable natural resources that sequester carbon. So native vegetation, some key actions include native vegetation protection, water efficient landscape standards, rainwater reuse program, and an urban forestry plan and tree planting incentive program. So you can go to the last slide. This is the last focus area, and it's community resilience. So the goal is to ensure that all Gig Harbor residents are prepared for current and future climate impacts. So increase community resilience to climate impacts, prepare infrastructure and services for climate change, and then prepare for sea level rise and coastal erosion. So some key actions include wildfire smoke and public health awareness, energy resilient critical facilities, coastal wetland and park expansion, and then climate emergency communication and resources. So those are the focus areas. And again, as I mentioned, the strategies and actions are available with lots of detail within the plan. So you'll definitely be able to dive in and take a look at those. And so the next slide, and now we'll just talk about the last key element of the plan here, which is implementation. So the implementation plan is really just outlining some key considerations for next steps for the city as you all take this plan into implementation. So there are kind of these 5 main buckets that we expanded on a little bit. So there's oversight and accountability. So really how each of the departments, will coordinate to meet the desired outcomes, kind of ongoing oversight and accountability of the plan, monitoring, evaluation, and reporting, how the city will track and report progress back on these actions, funding, proposed current and future funding mechanisms, and then community involvement, how the city will continue to engage the community. A lot of actions were, community engagement based. So, looking to those actions to how they will continue and how community members can participate. And then equity is how the CAP implementation will consider and center equity, specifically, focusing in on disproportionate impacts, access to participation and technical knowledge, and then tracking progress. So that's just the plan. But then the next slide, please. The matrix is where we have taken each individual action and built out next steps for each of these 7 criteria. So, I think we have 40 something actions within this plan. So each action has its own next steps essentially. So impact, this helps like prioritize and look at where, like what ones need to be sooner rather than later, especially if they're bigger long-term ones. So we have timeline there. Impact is talking about like the relative measure of the action's potential to reduce emissions and increase resiliency. So like, what are the big ticket items?
Hey, Lisa, can I just interrupt? I'm sorry
Yes.
to do that. I want to make sure that we have time to get some reaction from council on the implementation, or sorry, not implementation, but the strategies that we proposed to them in their memo today. And I feel like I know you were just getting to the end, but I just want to make sure we focus on that. And then we could come back to implementation maybe at another time, but
no worries.
In the interest of time, sorry to interrupt you. I apologize.
No worries. That was the last slide. And I think we are ready for your questions.
Great, thank you so much. Councilmember Henderson?
I got lots of questions. I don't know how we want to handle them.
One at a time, and then I can go back to you.
Okay. All right, well, let's start at 30,000 feet. Thank you very much. It's been good. I'm glad that we're moving ahead on this. I guess my first 30,000 foot question is, when I look at targets and metrics, I see these timeframes, 2030, 2040, and 2050. That's 17 years and 27 years out. I don't know if we've got 27 years that we can think about this and do some of these. Obviously, some of these are less, but I was like to see maybe in this plan some short-term things the city can do, like 1 to 5 years. And then maybe we can go from 5 to 10 years and then 10 to 20 or whatever it is. But 7 years is a long time. You all know that the climate impact is only getting worse and our time is running out. And I see these really long timeframes, and I'm kind of concerned that it's going to give people the impression, well, maybe 2 impressions, that we've got lots of time and maybe it's not as bad as we think. Because 27 years, we'll just wait for the 26th year, then we'll maybe think of doing something. So maybe you can address that. I guess a specific question is, this 2030, 2040, 2050, are we required by law to these, or could we put in 2025 and 2020 and something, or not 2020, sorry, it's in the past.
It's a bad year.
Is a bad year, right? So do we have an option?
Yes, I think, I mean, in terms of the targets is as ambitious as you all would like to be in terms of the timeline. They are in line with the Pierce County targets that we took a look at with their emissions profile. But I think more in terms of like the short term, the actions within the implementation matrix we've built out into like short, medium, and long term. So we've identified which actions should be pursued pretty much now in the next 3 years. And then there's medium term, which is like 5 to 7, and then the longer term is 7 to 10 years. So within that initial, like, the actions, there are timelines identified, especially when you look at the bigger, actions that need to get started sooner. We have identified those, but I do think in terms of the targets and metrics, they are in line with the county, but if you all would like to be more ambitious, I do not, I think that's great, really.
Thank you. Councilmember Wood?
Yes, going again, saying again on transportation, reduce vehicle miles. Wouldn't it be combustion engines? Why are we reducing vehicle miles on all engines when if we're gonna go to electric? It would seem to me that the important part is reduce the vehicle miles on combustion engines.
I can take that question, Alyssa. Yeah, we definitely get this question quite a bit, recognizing that obviously the long-term goal here is to have all electric vehicles on the road by 2050. But in the meantime, kind of reflecting, that is, decades away. And it will take quite a while to phase out fossil fuel vehicles on the road. So we don't just want to wait until that happens. We do want to be proactive in reducing those vehicle miles traveled. Vehicles do have a long lifetime. So, for the next 10 to 20 years, there will be fossil fuel vehicles on the road. And they will be heavily emitting. And so if we can reduce those vehicle miles traveled, that's great in an emission standpoint. Additionally, shifting a focus away from car-centered travel has a public health benefit as well. I'm sure we're all aware that cars can pose a safety issue with pedestrians and bikers and things of that nature. There's also the noise pollution and just taking up space on streets with parking and whatnot. So there's a dual function with reducing those vehicle miles traveled as well.
Yeah, another question, or are you going to go around? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go around. Okay, Councilmember Barber?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. It's very detailed. I have a concern that fewer than 1% of our population was involved in the community portion of the survey of the plan development. And I think that that's going to only amplify as we try to implement the plan. I'm not saying we shouldn't implement it. I think climate change is a huge problem. We need to do something, but we need to have some sort of plan. And I'm wondering what the plan is to get the 99% of the people who didn't care enough to even fill out a survey to care enough about climate change, us to be successful with even a small thing that we're trying to do. So I know that's kind of a broad question, but it's a giant concern that I have about the plan.
Yes, and I think that's very fair. We're on a bit of a time crunch just in terms of timeline, since this was a very short development. We did this in 6 months. Usually we take a bit longer to develop and fully engage the community. We do mention that within the plan that we did have fairly low turnout, I would say. And then within the implementation plan, how the city plans to continue to engage the community because it was just the tip of the iceberg here, and this will, in order to be successful, and will need community buy-in. Yeah. And then I guess I would just like to see if Roxanne, I know the city handled promotion of the community events, if you had anything you wanted to add. And I also see Gretchen, you unmuted, so.
Yeah, we had a very tight turnaround for this project since we got the Commerce grant. It was technically awarded in July, but they didn't tell us that we had the money until September. And then we had to go out and get a consultant, do contract negotiations, which is why we didn't start until late December, January. So I understand that, yeah, we had a very tight timeline, which didn't allow for as much public engagement as we would have wanted. We also had a limited budget, which didn't allow for as much public outreach as we would have wanted. As far as kind of like the public engagement for and like lifestyle changes, I think that is something that people who've been doing this work for like 4 decades still really struggle with. And I think having more outward messaging about the city's commitment and the city's commitment to this plan, I think as we move through it will be really helpful. We could also come back to council to kind of walk through in more detail our implementation plan, which we kind of vetted through all of the departments that would be involved. We had our staff implementation workshop, which I think was really, really helpful in drilling into that implementation matrix, but I don't think we have time to go through every single point of that today. So we can definitely come back to council with that if you want to see more of that.
Okay, I can talk to you about it offline too.
Okay.
And I'll just really quickly add, I know that there are other questions out there, and I will pass it back to you all, but just that really the having a climate action plan is a really important starting place in terms of engagement with the community. And so it's something that the whole community can rally around and go back to as a resource document. And also recognizing Roxanne and your team will be revisiting and tracking, like, how are we doing against the targets, and do we need to like turn up the levers a little bit more? Do we, how, you know, and really engaging with the community around that. So I would say so many fantastic opportunities moving forward to engage around the importance and the urgencies of climate.
Thank you.
Councilmember Likens?
Yeah, mine will just be, it's kind of a short comment. Thank you for answering all these questions, and I know we're on tight time. What would be most helpful for me as a council person, and you know, others can certainly weigh in differently, is to have, here are the most impactful things that we can do soon. Here's the least expensive things we can do soon. Here are the most easy to implement things to do soon, and have a matrix to say prioritization. And then, because that would help me say, okay, what's going to make the most impact now? And I see you already ready to talk.
Yeah, so that is the
Okay.
implementation matrix.
That's
So
what
they have done a great job prioritizing everything by like cost,
Terrific.
timeline, and who needs to be involved.
Terrific.
We just didn't have a ton of time, so
Yeah.
we will come back to you with the implementation matrix.
That'd be super.
And I think that's also, you know, to Councilmember Barber's point, I think that's also another opportunity for us to get out to the public with that
Mhm.
and say, here's, you know, what are your priorities,
Yeah.
community? Here's the things that, here's what the experts say, you know, and here's what's come out of that process. And now, what would you like to see us do, you know?
I think
now,
that would
you know,
help.
Yeah.
here's,
Yeah.
yeah, right,
What are you
exactly.
looking
Here's
for?
a strategy package A, B, C, which one do you like?
Okay.
I would also add, because we're running on a grant timeline, it's constrained because of the notification from Commerce, and then we have a grant deadline at the end of this month to get this work done.
Yeah.
We can always, if we want to do more work on this, extend the contract with Cascadia, because their contract technically ends today, which is why I wanted to get them on this study session so that they could, you could interface with them and hear from the people that did the actual work.
Yeah.
What is in the plan. So just keep that in mind for the future.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great.
Councilmember Henderson?
Okay, well, I had a lot of detailed things that I'll just you guys offline, but I had one somewhat general. There were some actions in here that are really cool. City carpool, commute programs, that's an action, good one. The municipal vehicle electrification, also very positive, very good, something that people can see. Then I start looking at some of the other actions thinking, well, we don't even control it. So something like climate and sustainability in the schools, we don't run the schools, we don't run their curriculum, so I'm not sure why that would be a help. Then I see one down here, aviation industry advocacy and education. We don't have an air fleet, so why? I guess maybe a general question or general comment is sort of like to see what the city and Gig Harbor can do. So aviation fuel, that's a national thing, and it's important. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying if it's on our list, we're not going to get it done because we don't have any control over aviation fuel. We don't own an air fleet. I wish we did, but we don't. So I guess I'd like it scrubbed to see what things that we actually have control over within the city. We're a small city, so we do have some control over some things. And I guess getting back to the timeline when we said the county and what else, well, the county's a lot bigger. And like a big ship, it takes a while to move it off course. The city, we're not as big as Tacoma or Pierce County. And so our timelines could be shorter and more aggressive because we're smaller. I mean, there's costs and stuff too, but so that's just gonna be general. And I'll get back to you guys.
Yes.
There is some recent climate legislation that was adopted and the guidance is still forthcoming. And Councilmember Wook attended a meeting last week and it was further described there. But because we are an adopter of the comprehensive plan next year, I can't even, which year, 2024. In 2024, we actually we are not required to implement some of that for, I believe, till 2029.
Correct.
Not to say that we shouldn't, but
Right.
in terms of the comprehensive plan update, I think what I'm hearing from council staff is that, potentially this plan, we have some really good data, but looking further into the implementation matrix, looking at what, like a cost comparative to what the city, what is likely achievable for a city, take that forward and run that through, have council feedback on that, perhaps. I will note that this is although their plan may be final, it's not approved yet, so this has not obviously gone through the legislative process. So by them presenting this isn't putting us on the line for anything right now. However, once we do adopt it, and if it gets into the comp plan, anything that has a fiscal element to that, we will be then need to figure out how we're going to achieve for the city.
Right.
So an implementation matrix that talks about cost, timeline, things like that would be very important in order for us to see if we're making progress or not.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'll just add, I think, to the first part of your question, the focus area of cross-cutting in municipal is like the direct areas that the city has control over. And then the rest of the focus areas, some actions, yes, the city might have control over, but some maybe not. So within the action language, it's, can be like encourage or support partnerships and, join this, like it's less directed at the city, but it's more of like the collective climate action. So, you might, like, you don't have control over if it's in the schools, but you can partner with them. And there was some energy around that at the staff workshop that we already know somebody. And so there was, so it's within the action description, it's a bit more detailed of what actually is, like, that was just the short name of the action. And then I just want to pop it over to Jenna to talk about the aviation, because that is also a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to what Alyssa said, deeper within the action language, we go more in depth about it. For the aviation action, for instance, we're looking at more advocacy, which is something that local governments can do on their own. They can be a voice out there that can be heard, that we support sustainable aviation. We would like to see the needle moved on aviation fuel becoming more sustainable. Another thing that a city can do within their own municipality is encourage residents to more like education around flying. A lot of airline emissions come from short haul flights, which are flights that are less than 300 miles. And it would be much more emission efficient to drive rather than fly in those scenarios. And just providing that education to maybe encourage more mindful air travel, and then also advocate for federal aviation to kind of move that needle towards sustainable fuel.
And the aviation question is one we get all the time. 'Cause it's like, we don't have an airport, we don't have like a plane fleet, but it's related to, CTAC and to, the size of a jurisdiction and proximity to the airports that service your community.
And we'll take one last question from Councilmember Wood.
Thank you. I would like to think anyway, that we can do something to protect our land carbon sinks. Because it sounds like that's maybe purchase more land, or what specific items did you have along that? What are some key action items you have along that?
Yes, great question. The first one is about urban forestry. So pretty much it says here, support the urban forestry plan, which you all already have in the works, and then working with property owners to expand tree planting, so adding to those carbon sinks. Some of the other ones, let's see here. Oh, it was identifying and looking at what lands and like natural resources specifically provide buffers in Gig Harbor for if there's a flooding event. So like, where are your wetlands, the estuaries, the forest? So that would be more of a deep dive with GIS to look at where these resources are and ensuring that I would assume within some sort of land use policy that those are all being protected. That did actually come up at the staff workshop as well, about buying more land. And so I think that would require more of a deeper dive into how exactly you all would want to go about, like, what are the next steps for identifying and protecting, like what type of protection are you all looking for? So that, and then the rest within that are more about water conservation. So those are just the couple ones that we had within that focus area.
So the carbon sink is all about absorbing carbon dioxide in the air, however we do it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Carl and Roxy, for your work on this. Thank you, Cascadia team, for your great work and presentation. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Did you guys have any last things to say?
I just like to say, I know this is a lot of information for council to try and absorb. There's a lot in this plan. And so I think as Councilmember Henderson said, and Councilmember Barber said, maybe, contacting Roxy or both of us offline, if you've got questions, happy to sit down and talk through some of this stuff, make sure we hear everybody's thoughts. And then when we come back, we can report out those thoughts so that the rest of the council and the public can hear about, what those things are that are concerning about the plan. And as Roxy said, we're going to be bringing this out to back to the CCC PAC group, if we can get them reconvened, and then also to a planning commission. So there's going to be other opportunities to talk more about this. This is certainly not a done deal, although we're close to sort of a plan that we can now chew on, but we still have the opportunity to make changes to that before council adopts it by resolution or before we put it into our comp plan. So lots of opportunities. I don't want you to feel that we're rushed at this point just because this contract with Cascadia is over. We still have time and staff can do more work to make this what we'd like to be.
And there's some other grant capabilities too, that I think Roxy and Carl are looking into, so that there's money, to further the work and supplement staff time.
We recognize how important it is.
Yes.
Draft week for the CCC PAC?
We don't yet. Do we want to see that? No.
We will have a copy of this presentation for council sent to council.
As well as the original, the employee survey presentation, you'll receive a
Yes.
copy of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Cascadia. I hope you have a great evening.
Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Thanks so
Have a
much
good
for
day.
having us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
Carl and Roxy, and I am hearing we need a 5-minute break, so let's do that. We will reconvene at 4:45.
I think we can ask you.
It's important.
It is important. Welcome back to the Gig Harbor City Council study session of Thursday, June 15th. Time is 4:46 p.m. We are on our fourth item, which is our active CIP budget. It's the owl's gonna pick all of that up. This is our Public Works Director, Jeff Langholm, for this report and update.
Thank you, Mayor. This is going to be the first time I'm going to be presenting the new format that we're going to have for our active capital improvement project update. So I'm going to start with just flashing it on the screen. You can look at it. And I'm going to talk through it a little bit about what is there, what isn't there, and what to expect. So here we go. First of all, I want to say a hearty thank you to all of the engineering staff and to Mike Simmons, but particularly to Mike Simmons for making this happen. Mike and I talked back and forth many times about what we needed and how he could help make that work. And so he came up with this big story map. You've heard us talk about story maps, Esri story maps, or Esri is the company we use for GIS. And so it's not a GIS layer, but it uses the same GIS data that we have across the city. And so this is a story map. It's something you can scroll through and then click on, and it also has GIS information within it. And if you remember, I mean, what I had previously presented when we were doing CIP updates was a schedule. It was a boring old Microsoft project schedule, which is very helpful to me and my staff. So, but it's not visual. And so what this has, this story map has is it shows locations. It has updated data instantly. Whenever engineering staff update data, the story map is instantly updated. It shows, and what we do is we update our tasks that we're working on or the statuses of the project. It also has live web, so you can go through the project and see the project here. And if you want to see more about the project, you can go to the actual project webpage for those projects where we have web pages. What it doesn't have is that scheduled breakdown by task. It doesn't have that Microsoft project anymore. We tried to figure that out. We couldn't make that work. So we just are trying to put more bullets in there that have more dates on it. And then you just have to read those words. You can see on here, the date says today, June 15, 2023. That date will update whenever one of the project administrative staff updates this web page or the story map. What it won't do is it won't highlight what was updated, and it does not link to our notify me. So that's a little bit of a hiccup, but we didn't have that before. So, but we still are having active project web pages for those projects that will be most impactful. So if people do want to continue to sign up and see what's going on a project in particular, you still have to sign up for Notify Me. It will not bring you to this page, but to the actual active project, the project webpage itself. Staff is prepared to have this version. Obviously, it might not be. We have two versions. We have an internal version that has all staff names on it, and then we have a version for the public. I forget. I think I've updated the staff version here because wasn't getting the link to look for the public. But we're going to have a public web page or a story map available tomorrow or Monday. I want to present it to the council. And it's going to be available from the city webpage. Okay, so I'm going to start scrolling through this, and this is just a scroll type of thing. What you're going to see is there's going to be a map of the city on the right. It has each project identified with this white arrow. If I hover it over, or if I hover over it, I can click on it. And it will bring me right to the zoom into where the project is located. And it zooms into the project details. I'm gonna back out for just a second, just to see how we are. I intentionally clicked on that one because I knew it was the first one. But what we can do is we're going to try and update pictures, images as we can, and then the bullets. But the way that I'm gonna scroll through it today is I'm gonna just scroll down to the left side.
Okay.
And you see, if I don't click on any of these, each one of these is a link. If I don't click on any of them, you see there's just a quick summary of the project. Again, it shows project team, it won't show in the public version. And the image itself, and you can scroll over and see all the projects. But what happens is if you click on one, sorry. It's there. If I click on one, then it zooms in on the map to where it's located. And it zooms in and provides a detailed breakdown of what exactly the status update is for this project.
And is the picture that shows up there the latest picture that you guys have uploaded?
It's the latest picture we've uploaded.
Yes.
It's, yeah. And not all of them will have these, but some of them will.
Jeff, in the public version, is there gonna be the project manager and their contact information on there?
No, we could have that on there. We were keeping that mostly for the project webpage itself. Because we have some projects that are in design and we don't want necessarily, we're not looking for public input on that point. So that's why if we have a project webpage, then we would just have people direct toward that to find out who to contact.
But so the project webpage would be here. on
I'll
the-
show you.
Okay.
I'm gonna get to one of those examples. So I'm gonna scroll through most of these because you're gonna have the opportunity to see this, like I said, either tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday. And I think is this what story map going as part of the mayor's top 5 this week?
Yes,
Okay,
I believe it is.
so if we get all this together, I was going to glitch this morning that Mike got us through. But then that link can be provided to you and you can have access to it. So again, project is pretty typical, project description, project budget, and then here's the status update. We try and do the oldest status updates at the top and the most recent ones at the bottom. These were just updated today. But on this project, the stem walls, or sorry, the footing was poured Tuesday. Stem walls will be poured next week. And then Lawhead Architects is moving forward with the contract amendment that you approved last council. So you can just keep scrolling. There's no updates on this Boat Visitor Center. This information is status quo for now. So I'm gonna rush through this a little bit, but here's phase 2, 3 feasibility study. And this talks about the stakeholder meeting that we had yesterday. So again, it's not gonna be updated daily. This is an anomaly. We have our public outreach meetings every other Thursday morning. So it just happened that we happened to have that updated for that meeting.
So this will be updated every
Almost
every other week.
Yeah, almost every other week.
So it's really up-to-date information for the residents who are, what's going on with this project.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool.
And then here's a link. So if for every project that we have a link to, you can click on that link. It's going to pop open that web page. And it's going to show you exactly what's going on. And this is the sports complex webpage. And so it's very detailed. And you can go all the way through and it talks about all parts of the sports complex. That's what it says 1A, or sorry, 1B. There's a new traffic information. If you haven't seen that, we added this to the web page. It talks about traffic in 2018 or 2017 and 2030. Anyway, you can go on and on. There's phase 1A, 1B, and then here's phase 2. So that's available for many of these. Oops. And then the home port, commercial fishing home port, we have a quick status update on this. Long and short of this one is we are waiting for mitigation to be ironed out between the U.S. Army Corps, National Marine Fisheries, and Department of Fish and Wildlife. We're going to be before you on June 29th, a study session to talk about that mitigation. I'll talk about, we need to figure out how we're going to that we're gonna need more funding for it, and then talk about some donation items, donation agreements and mortgage agreement for the home port. And then again, there's the link to the commercial cleaning home for our webpage. Scansy net shed improvements, just quickly, here's this one. At the very bottom, we were trying to get to the design review board on June 8th. However, we were unable to get there. The meeting has been rescheduled for a later date. We don't have that later date yet. There's a little bit of a hiccup with the historic preservation board that was just adopted. Is there going to be a design review board? And I don't want to get into that today, but is that we wait for the historic preservation commission to be created? If so, we might be into fall for this project, which would mean we miss construction.
However, an asterisk that Jeff doesn't want to say, but an efficiency is right now there's 2 CLG or historic members on the DRB. And if one of them can't either, which is what happened to the meeting, then it can't happen and it pushes the project out. With the Historic Preservation Commission, there will be 5. And so we will not have as many canceled meetings due to lack of attendance.
Continuing Crescent Creek Park Master Plan. You know the update on most of those items there. We will be coming back to city council and, well, at some point soon. Katrina and Jennifer and I have been talking about how we're going to come back with what information. I don't have anything for you as of today, but we are going to come to you hopefully at the July 13th study session with some options to consider and just asking for direction. Sports complex phase 1B. We are getting close to the end of permitting. We have some revisions that are going to be occurring, and then we're going to be submitting or resubmitting to the planning division soon. And then we're finalizing 100% plan specs and estimate. So we may be out to advertise, it says early fall, so like September. That puts us into heavy construction probably spring.
Okay, so we wouldn't do much till then.
Yeah, we need to finalize that, but that's what it's looking.
Okay.
I mean, we might do some, North Creek culvert replacement, we are continuing to move forward with design on this one. We've been talking a lot about stormwater requirements, and who to bring in when and how we're gonna approach the agencies on this. As a side note, we still haven't heard back yet on the grant application. We probably won't hear back. From what I understand, they had thousands of applications the federal government did for this. And each one of them was about 25 pages long. So we won't hear back from them probably until October, November timeframe on a $40 million ask.
It's a nice graphic. Was that from the report or was the person walking under the bridge?
That was from the feasibility study final report. You might not have seen it because we probably presented the feasibility study before we.
Yeah.
Final report. Oops. Burton Drive roundabout metering, we have some interesting information. We gotta have the final report provided to us, but on this one, we may not need to do this project. Traffic impacts with Harbor Hill Drive and the Burnham, Harbor Hill roundabout have caused such an improvement to this roundabout that we may not need to do the metering.
Wow.
Which will save us quite a bit of money, but it will adjust our legislative ask.
Yeah.
So that's good news. Yeah, that is good news. Elm Drive right turn lane extension, consultants working on that one, nothing much to update on that. But we will be updating you at some point soon. We only have on here our westbound on-ramp right turn lane. That's the one at Pioneer going on westbound Highway 16. Consultant is moving forward with that. They've got some traffic counts and some survey. And then we've got to work with WashDOT on a couple things. And we hope to be back to you later this year with some options and some concepts to review. 30th Avenue Phase 2 half-width roadway improvements. We're rocking right along on this one with design. We hope to have 60% documents for review later this month. So just moving forward, that will include the signalized signal revisions at 56 and 38.
Are we gonna get another presentation on that of what they actually came up with as far as the sidewalk and the trees being retained?
Yes, probably in July or August.
Okay.
Yeah, as we finish up our, we're not in a big rush to do this. We know this project will not be able to go out, it will not be able to go out to bid. Speaking of question, Until later this year. Okay. End of the year or maybe the first part of next year. Prentice Fenimore halfway improvements, continuing to move this project along also. Just real quick, we're working with right of way and possibly also on the same timeline, 38 be ready to be out to bid at the end of this year. So, but we need to finalize a few things on related to right of way and temporary construction. This one's great news, 50th Street mid-block crossing. You can kind of see in the image where it is. Also here, I can zoom in. But for most of you, you know right where this is. The crosswalk's actually right here, just west of 34th. Plans are now complete. They are in the hands of our operations division, and they expect to start construction mid-July and be done sometime in August.
Great.
Yeah. History Museum, unfortunately, we have not progressed that design yet, but we have a lot of other things going on that we will jump back on this one.
That poor thing gets shuffled off on all the time. For years.
Burger Drive halfway frontage improvements, that project is moving along through the permitting. We hope to have the final set of permits soon. Apparently, Army Corps has said that they're ready to issue us permits, but we haven't seen it yet.
That was a huge, this afternoon at the farmer's market, we had several people come up and talk to us about how they wanted improvements on Burger Drive. It was really nice to be able to say, we're working on it, we're progressing.
We are getting much closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff and I were able to present to the, it's called What's Up Gig Harbor. It's put on by the Downtown Waterfront Alliance, but all the downtown businesses. And when Jeff mentioned the sidewalk project there, the room actually, they did stand ovation, but like
Elated.
everybody's very,
Yeah.
very appreciative that council allocated money for that pedestrian connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have one temporary construction that we're still needing to acquire, but to have that resolved soon. Nothing yet new, on the. Sorry, not speaking correctly this afternoon. No new updates on the ammonia control of the digester.
Yeah, didn't I know that?
Murphy's Landing Marine and Navigation Channel, we hope to have this back before council at the June 29th study session. So we have more information, should I then. Soundview Drive AC water main replacement. We've merged all the projects for AC water main replacement into one project here. Because there's 3 water main replacements in this corridor, and just merge them into one. We may not build all of them because we're having 2 of them they're smaller projects that are additive bid items. But we just merged them all together since they're all being designed together for efficiency.
And this is also the mid-block crossing is part of that project too, right?
We've talked about that being part of this project or just being designed and ready to be constructed immediately after the project is.
Okay.
That, yes. And then I believe this is the last one, emergency intertie at Kenwood Boulevard. Yeah, it's the last one. We have now sent the interlocal agreement to Washington Water and are waiting their signature as of earlier this week. So we're getting very close, and then designs being finalized also. So getting close.
This is really wonderful. I love this.
Can you add more to it? I know the list is longer than this.
Oh,
This
this is the one that we're,
this is really good. I mean, this answers so many questions so fast.
Yep.
Is it easier for your staff to do this versus the? You're
I wouldn't
still
say
getting the
easier.
Microsoft project list anyway for you.
We are, but we're not updating it as frequently.
Okay.
And we just revised how we're getting the information to our administrative staff so that they can update this. Mike has trained them how to input that into the story map with their administrative privileges. And so we're getting used to it. I think it will be as efficient.
Is this the only way you're looking at projects?
Oh, no.
So what other way are you looking at?
We're
projects?
still using our Microsoft project. And then we also have, we update and review what we need to show for our active project, construction project page. So as they go into construction, our active project page will be updated for construction projects as well.
So that's like what we used to get?
No, it's been on the website for years.
I mean, this is very pretty.
Let me see if we can. We need to make the public aware of this.
Yes,
Oh,
so
is it?
it's gonna be in my top 5 with a link to this story map, which is much easier for the public to digest this information versus everything that's going on the back end of things. I'm assuming that if any of you still want that big giant CIP printout, Jeff can provide that to you if you want it.
Yeah, it's just not gonna be updated.
It's just not gonna be, yeah.
I like it.
What I really like about this, and what I was gonna say is, for the community, they go to the webpage, they see everything that's going on one page before they even click on anything, and there's a huge story right there of why something might not have happened so quickly, because there's this many projects going on, not just the one in your backyard.
That's correct. It shows the amount of projects. It also shows the amount of funding the council has allocated to that in order to keep up with infrastructure. And it also allows us to see it on a map that is able to show that we are geographically equitable in our improvements, regardless of which part of the city that you are in. And so it meets many things in one tool. But to Councilmember Rodenberg's point, we're gonna work on how to get this out to the public. And City Clerk Stecker is working on a website update, and it's gonna be much more user friendly. And so there's certain things that we're gonna want front and center on the page, and this is one of those items.
But this is what the public has been asking for a really long time.
Yeah.
Is something that is easy to see, easy to read, lays it out, you know, and with maps, so that they can see where in the city is this project going on? How will this affect me? What's the timeline of this major road project? I live right behind there. When is this gonna start? What's going on? And then also to see, how are we spending their tax dollars? They wanna know what we're spending their money on. So this checks almost every box of the communication side of what the public has been asking us to provide to them. And so I'm really proud of Jeff and Mike and our team
Good job.
for doing this, and so happy that Josh is working on the website improvements, much needed for years. We've
What
needed
a
it.
job, that's.
What a job, it's huge. So give him lots of
Candy,
chocolate and LaCroix. And to get cookies, you know, to get them through. But yeah, I'm so proud of our staff. We've been working really hard on communication out to the public. What are we doing and how can they best see it? And then how do we get that information to them? How do we market our website in a better way? You know, with the Gigabyte is helping tremendously. I have feedback constantly about the top 5 and the newsletter. Podcast is picking up steam. Not as much as the Gigabyte. Gigabyte is really, really well read. And so that's probably the best way that I can think of right now to get the information out there. And then Facebook posts, of course, we're posting way more to our social media page, which is putting us higher up in people's news feeds so they actually see things that are going on. So, yeah.
So this is what we've had on our website for years. This is our active projects for under Public Works. This is something where we will probably remove some of these items, but the benefit of, again, you can click on notify
Right.
to see the update. So, but we might just, we need to talk about how we're gonna approach this page. Might be active construction projects moving forward instead of just active projects, because as you can see, we're gonna be otherwise duplicating this information.
Yeah.
And so that's not ideal.
And so you're gonna have a map on this page.
Not this one here, no.
That's the.
And
That's
the
the
people
other
can, oh,
No, that's the other one. This is that was a story map. The map, the
right,
story map. This is our active projects page where you need to revise this somehow. And we haven't decided what we're gonna do with this, but if we're leaning towards just having active construction projects.
but the story map will also, they can click on that map and it will take them to the active project.
It'll take them to the project they're clicking on, yes.
To that, yeah, right.
To that website.
Right.
If
It won't take them
not,
here.
but not all of them will. I mean, the 50th Street RFB crossing won't have an active project.
That's done by
Right.
us.
And it's so small.
Right.
Yeah, you want to minimize the things you have to keep updating.
I think, if I'm understanding what Councilmember Luke is saying, I think on here, we could have the project, the CIP list that you just showed us, in case folks want to know more, other than what is active. You know.
What I was thinking was it could say, please look at our story map,
Well-
you know, a pointer to the other page.
It will say
Yeah.
to see all, yeah, like it says not here to see our project, we can do that also, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we need, but this is
Instead of having
step
to
two.
list them again.
Yeah.
Well done.
So I'll stop showing just two more quick items. We're not planning on submitting documentation ahead of time for these updates in the future. Well, I'll continue to show up every month or two and provide these updates and talk through the story map and answer questions. But there's nothing to really send, since this is all live, you can see it on your own, just click on the link and look at it ahead of time if you want to, you know, the day of, the day before, whenever. And I'll be ready to answer questions. And then, yeah, so I'll still show up and also go through this and then give you updates and if you have questions.
So can I at least, is it possible, before you come back and talk about that, is there some way to see that page that we used to get? With all of them, so that it's really easy to see them all at a glance? Is that just not made anymore?
I'm not sure what you're asking, what
Yeah.
page.
Project schedules.
Yeah,
It
the,
used
you
to
know,
be in the packet that was
Yeah.
like an 11
Those-
by 11 bar.
Bar graphs. or something like that.
yeah, is that not done anymore?
We just don't, we're gonna update that quarterly. It's a lot of effort to update that.
But you're putting it on here.
No, it's not on there.
I
No,
thought
she
that
meant
page
data.
showed that there was data on here for what was happening on these projects. So there's not gonna be data what's happening on these
There's
projects?
data, but there's not that.
There won't be a project schedule.
What
Like you saw.
So it has dates and times of what is upcoming, what's been done.
Yeah, yeah.
But there just won't be it's not gonna be a graphed chart. It's gonna be in that more user-friendly format, but it's the same information.
So, and I think that's great for the public. But I don't know, I'm gonna miss it, seeing that, because
Well-
it's two or three pages and it's really easy to get a look at to discuss at our meetings, but I guess you're not gonna do that anymore.
Quarterly, and that will be updated. Is what Jeff said, what Jeff.
we're hoping to do that. Yeah, let me bring up the last one we looked at and then let me make sure that we're talking about the same.
Okay,
Is that the on schedule, not on schedule, on budget, not on budget?
No, that
no,
was
that's
the
a quarterly,
quarterly budget review.
yeah. Is that going to be?
Microsoft project.
We need that. So let me make sure that it's sharing now. Is this?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, this is very time consuming to update routinely, and this, so we will have to, if every time we update this, we're gonna be updating our story map. And then we'll have to separately go on and update this, and the only people on our staff that can update this is Aaron, myself, Dean, and maybe one other person.
You're gonna update this every quarter.
That's our hope, is to update every quarter. We created this exact spreadsheet for presentation to council.
This is so easy to see for us. If we get this quarterly, then at least can we get this quarterly so that we can at least have we know we coming back, we can look at this and then go into the individual on our own. Can we get this quarterly?
Yes, we can do that quarterly.
I think that would help me.
Councilor Likens?
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna say, maybe we could just try this for a bit.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and see how it goes, because I'm going back to earlier in our meeting where they talked about people having more work than they have time for. And you just said it's time consuming and, you know, even on a quarterly basis. So I don't want to put extra time to Jeff and his staff. You know, maybe we can try it this way and we can see how it goes, and if we're not getting the information, you know, but I just don't want to put that on your staff.
And duplication of effort, yes.
Yeah.
What Brenda said, that's what I was thinking.
What you're not seeing, and I very much appreciate that. What you're not seeing with the story map is you're not seeing where the next step in the process is and how that shifting of, if we have to delay, how that affects everything else. I understand Councilmember's Wu concern because she wants to be able to see how those have impacted.
Could that be incorporated into the story map?
No, we've tried.
You have.
This is a very specific Microsoft project that there's a lot of detail behind here.
Okay.
And you cannot merge the two.
Can you put in expected end date?
We could, but in order to do that, we have to update this every time. Yeah, because it has to calculate that. I mean, you change one of these dates, this is a PDF, and you would change it and then it cascades down.
But you say that you're going to do this quarterly, because you need this for
We
internal.
need this, yeah, we need this
Okay,
to make
that's
sure
good
that.
enough for me, that's good enough for me.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jeff, thank you and your team.
Yeah.
This is beautiful, and it's great, really, for our community for sure.
Okay, moving right along, and Jeff, if you need to, exit, please feel free. Have a wonderful evening. We'll move on to, yes, state cookies, flash vote parks funding survey results, and our report is from our city clerk, Josh Sugar.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna share my screen too, and I'm just gonna put up the memo that's in the packet. We talked about this, I think, in the last study session, but we didn't really have time to get into the results from flash vote on the park funding to find out what residents weighed in on. So I just wanted to go over these really quickly with you. Just first, a little bit of background on how flash vote works. So for this survey, we had 187 people that responded that are actual city voters, registered voters. We don't know for sure that they're registered voters, but they're a voting age, and we know that they're in the city, so they're very likely registered voters. We also got information from the Pierce County Auditor's Office on what our voting data looks like. That's this first set of bullets here. So we know that 52% of likely voters, people that voted either in the last general or the last primary or the last special election that we had. We know that 52% are age 61 or older. 28% are in that age 46 to 60 range, and 20% are between 31 and 45, and 10% are under the age of 30. The results that we got from the 187 people that took the survey are actually pretty in line with that. We get a little more response from people that are older than 61, so we have 59% compared to 52%. And then that group between 31 and 60 kind of is right there in the same wheelhouse where 39% to 48%. So when you look at these survey results, if you want to try to weight it to what you think people will actually vote, you can kind of skewer the results for the older version, for the older voters, and kind of put more emphasis on the votes for the middle-aged groups there. And the one thing you'll notice with these surveys is we almost never get responses from anyone under the age of 30, and that's just true of surveys in general everywhere. That's the hardest demographic to get. And well, they also don't vote very much, so that kind of lines in with what we expect to see. So with that background, we can look at the results that we got from the park survey. 187 responses. Our survey team tells us that's a pretty good sample. That's got a margin of error around 7%. If we, for example, if we were to add another 100 responders to that, it would probably change our margin of error to about 4%. So we really have a pretty good sample size. We could use more, but really the results we're getting are pretty accurate. And because the people who are responding are lining up with our voting numbers, Flashvote is a really good tool to know how people are going to vote. So it may not be the best tool for, what the residents think in general or what the community thinks in general, but it's a really good tool for what voters think. So we'll get into the numbers from the Parks Funding Survey. The key takeaway, 73% of the respondents would support a new 20-year tax levy that replaces the expiring 3.5 million bond. So that was one of the key questions we asked is, would you support another levy for the same amount? We got 73% that said they would support that amount and more. When we upped that question to basically doubling it up to 8 million for a bond, we got about 50% support for that. And because the bond needs 60% support to pass, that's kind of outside of the range of something that people will support. When we get into specific projects, this is where it gets a little more interesting. Only one project, the Cushman Trail Connector, got a majority of support. And the question that we asked here is, what would you support an additional tax to fund? So we're asking the question, what would you pay extra taxes for? Not do you support the project or not support the project? We're saying, what are you willing to pay more for? So the Cushman Trail Connect, that's a pretty clear winner. The senior center, the community center project, that one got pretty good support, and I don't think the question was asked clearly enough, because when we got into the written comments, we saw a lot of people say, well, we don't want this sound before us, because we don't want to cut down any trees. And I think if people knew that, it's going where that house is, where we might use the house or demo the house and put something else in, there probably would have been a little more support for that, so. And then, going down the line, you see sports complex phase 2 got pretty good support. Skate park playground, that got good support, probably because it wasn't very much money. Maritime Pier, Cushman Trail phase 5, so on down, you get down to projects like the commercial fisherman's home port, the Wilkinson barn restoration, which really didn't garner much support as part of the levy. I think that covers a lot of what we need to point out from the survey. Some of the results don't really jump out right away, so you got to really dig into the nitty-gritty to find it, but I just want to make sure that this was for our council. So if you have any questions on it, Peter.
Josh, can you go into a little bit about what the survey didn't tell us?
Yeah, that's the part I kind of alluded to, where we were just asking people what you would pay additional taxes for. So because the project only scored 35%, that doesn't mean that 35% of the community bought the project. It's definitely going to be higher if people know they don't have to pay anything extra for it. So
Yeah, and so how, after Josh and I discussed that, it'd be different, what would you support a senior center, or would you support a senior center if you had to pay extra, right? Those two things are different versus funds that we already have. So people's answers to those questions could be different.
Would it be useful to have gotten that data though, but they support just without the and thing?
So that data would be useful to have, but then we run into that other question that we have of, are we polling voters here, or are we polling residents, community and users? So we'd be asking the question, would you want to use a sports complex, or would you use a community center? And that data that we get, we would have to look into a little more closely and make sure we're capturing, the people that are under 30.
And specifically, because we were specifically talking about a voter measure here,
Right, yeah,
that's why what Josh just said is important, is, we were considering putting something on the ballot for voting.
Right.
And so it's very important to know who the likely voters are
Right.
in relation to that.
If you had a high percentage of people 61 years and older, certain projects appeal to them more than they appeal to the other people, so.
And that age group is,
You can't take the data point, just verbatim, you have to put in the variances. When you're analyzing it, I would think.
people over 61 are entering the survey at higher than 50% of our survey taking pool, and they're 25% of the population.
If you ask them about bicycle trails or something, not a lot of people over 61 ride a lot of bicycles. But there might be a whole lot of people in town that might have that.
Councilor Barber.
I think this is really interesting data. I would really like to see us. I don't believe it's statistically significant. I don't think it's something that we can use at this point. Because again, like the climate survey that had less than 1% of the voters involved in it, agreeing with it or taking it, we have less than 2% of our voters who participated in the survey. So I don't think we can say that that correlates to this. I think Flash Vote is a fabulous tool for certain things, and I would really like to encourage us to keep encouraging people to sign up for Flash Vote so that we can get a statistically significant number of voters. And I think you guys have done a really good job of doing more posts on Facebook and that kind of thing. To reach those younger voters, we need to be on Instagram. And we need to be putting things on the social media sites, Instagram being the easiest, where younger voters are and where they will respond and sign up. And I think if we can do some of those kinds of things, I think we'll start to see more response from the younger voters, but otherwise, it's just, I have a real hard time accepting the results of the survey.
We definitely have a lot to do in
Yeah.
outreaching to our youth. And it's one of the things that I know that is important to the mayor as well as council, so we're gonna consider those ways. Josh has had some discussions with Black Boat about how we can do that. Instagram is a potential opportunity. We're also looking to beef up our LinkedIn profile. I don't know if we can do TikToks, but I don't know if we want to do it.
I wouldn't scare.
No, right.
I don't know what we want.
Yeah, we should do some little dances on TikTok. I would, you know.
I still think it's a really cool tool.
Mhm.
I just think we need more people on it.
It's an point of data, right?
Yeah.
And so our goal is to try to provide more data
Mhm.
and for council and their decision making, and so it's 8 point of data, is it perfect? No.
No,
Someone suggested to me, is there any way we could partner with the Y, and the Y could help promote getting people to be on, sign up for Flash Vote?
Yes,
You
we
get a
do.
lot of traffic, yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
We can talk about that.
Yeah.
We're also looking
Yeah.
at that postcard that hoping to get out at some point, seeing that goes over who the mayor and the council are, what the strategic plan goals are, and then how to get a hold of us, and then a big push for signing up for Flash Vote QR code. And that would go to every residential home. And so we're hoping to do that by the end of summer.
Oh, that's great.
Hadn't heard about that.
That's good.
and I think every time we do a flash vote, we put it out on all of our tools. Again, this is out there, take it.
I'm sorry, but you just hit on one more thing. I know I heard from several council members, we're putting this out there, asking the residents just to take this and that it's important. And so this is why I think it's really important that, you know, Josh said, let's get this on the work session. And so we want to do that. Once we have a flash vote go out, we want to be able to provide you with a specific time to go over what those are.
And it would be nice also to have the results of flash votes, all of our flash votes on our website. If we could have a web page or something like that with so citizens
Yeah.
could see that.
It'll be part of the new website.
Yeah.
And I would also say the top of each one of those flash vote result things, that this is, the purpose was, this is why we did this, because sometimes you can't tell.
There's two things, you can have a question before the survey, like, how much do you know about Cushman Trail? And then ask them a question about Cushman Trail, because you get people responding that know very little, if anything, about the question they're answering. You know, they're not aware of what's been done or how much money's been spent, how long it's been on there, who it's gonna benefit. They just.
I think we can do that.
We can put like a little
Surveys.
Yeah.
So we can get.
About whether or not you're aware that we have our fund. We do try to find, include some filters on people's awareness.
Councilor Wilkins?
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, I would love to get more people up just because that 7%, plus or minus 7%, just looking at. Medical, I'd love to have it be just a little tighter, and you said 100 more people would get it to 4, that'd be, to me, a lot more meaningful, because we're looking at gaps of 5% between two projects, saying this is number one, but when there's a plus or minus 7%, so I think it's great. I mean, I think it is, you can take a sample size so long as it's like you showed in the data that it was pretty consistent with voters. And this was specific to a bond that would go to the voters, but also just a way to get even a pulse point of what the city's feeling. I think it gives you, it may not be actionable, super specific data, but at least it shows you where the hot spots are. So I think it's great.
Then one of the huge points of the survey is that we had about 100 respondents that were not locals in the city, either, people that have 2 residences or people that live just outside city limits.
Yeah.
When you factor in their responses, the needle doesn't move.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you say then, what?
The needle doesn't move. The results are pretty much the same.
Okay.
Interesting.
So in the greater community.
I think that's what gives Flash Vote part of their confidence to say this is a really solid survey, because even if you add more people to it, it's not gonna change much.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think in some surveys, not Flash Vote, but you asked the question, would you like to take a survey on purple cars? And everybody interested in purple cars is gonna sign up for that. So now your questions are about purple cars and you're gonna get all positive answers. You know, it's almost, maybe I meant climate change. You're gonna get people take a survey on climate change already. The only people that are gonna take, not the only people, but the majority of people taking that particular survey are in favor of doing something quickly about it. Whereas that's probably true, but I think it skews it when you search for answers from the people that already have predetermined ideas.
One of the controls in Flash Vote is when they launch a survey, they don't count the results of anyone that signed up for it after the survey launched. So if you send an email to someone and say, hey, they're doing a survey on parks, anybody that signs up after that point, their results don't count.
That's great.
They've been screened out.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
So that
I'm
I-
curious. I'm curious on the survey, if we included those people,
There's a filter to do that. You can play around with that.
I'm curious what that would do to the results. I'm not saying we should publish it, but I'm.
The other thing with Flash Vote is that we have about just short of 500 people that are signed up to get notified to take the survey. About half of those are signed up because Flash Vote sent out text messages just randomly to people who live in the area. So they may not even know, have ever been to a city council meeting. They just got a text message to say sign up, and they did.
But wait, how many people are signed up?
It's about 488 people registered.
It would start to
We
get
had a
them
really
engaged,
good
but they haven't been yet.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, 488 were invited for this last survey, and 16 people took the survey that weren't invited.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the card's gonna help a lot that we're gonna mail out.
Yes.
I think that'd be like, it's more efficient. Good.
in the water.
As we've learned, the QR code businesses were all going out of business before COVID, and now they are
They are
ramping up, so.
Yeah. And there's two different kinds of QR codes I didn't know about.
Really?
Yes. It's dynamic and static, is that what it is? There's two different kinds. Don't ask me the difference, I don't know.
We're all old.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
so. I'm figuring out how to use them.
in the interest of time.
Yeah.
Well, we have the room until midnight if we want it. I don't want to be here till midnight, so if we, okay, so then let's try to go through these next two, and again, if we can go back to just, raise your hand, I'll try to jot down who's
Yeah,
asking what.
really quick.
If, we gotta just try to wrap up if we can. I know that our staff needs to go. So,
So
So
the
you
next
wanna-
one on the
you wanna wrap
agenda,
it?
yeah, so the advisory board report, this will be really brief. We just looked into the residency of each of our advisory board members. Based on that, we found we have one arts commissioner who we knew didn't live in, Pierce County. She's resigned already for other reasons. We have one person on LTAC who lives in Seattle, but registered for LTAC under his parents' address. The board and commission candidate review committee was aware of that at the time and still appointed him. So he is on LTAC until the end of, actually, I think they come up in September this year, so I think he's finishing out his term. And then we had a couple of people on the building code advisory board, and everyone on the building code advisory board has lapsed because that board has not met officially for 6 or 7 years. So we'll be coming to you to talk to you about dissolving that at some point.
I wondered, I thought,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a-
what I was
it's a secret.
thinking,
Study your salary. Study for getting your salary.
Yeah.
so direction that I'm looking for from council is those, so I guess there's only one remaining. But what I was going to ask was those that do not meet residency requirements that are on our boards. Do you want us to allow them to carry out their terms? Or do you want us to terminate their board membership and go out for new applicants? Okay, so council member, what,
I like them to serve out their term.
okay, council member,
I would like to see them terminated immediately, and the reason is they know what the requirements are, and they know they're on there not meeting the requirements, so that shows a certain level of dishonesty. I mean, So they should
Just
be.
to be clear, we haven't really notified them that we changed the requirements, so.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. So,
Yeah.
okay, that's it.
Yeah. So if they, the rules changed after they were appointed, and so my feeling was that they would remain, that they would serve out the remainder of their term. But I wanted to, I guess, hear if any of you felt strongly the opposite, Councilor Lycan.
I was just gonna say, I agree that just let them serve out their terms, but I would like every boards and commission to know what the term.
Absolutely, yeah, I think a refresher reminder,
So that
and if they move, they need to tell us, and knowing
Exactly.
about them.
Just so that
Yes.
it's clear, like each one that meets, just say,
Yes.
hey, you know, that you'll serve out your term, but you won't be, you know, real.
Yes,
And I would say that we make that not necessarily in writing snail mail, but we send it in an email so that I can't say I didn't come to that meeting, so I didn't know.
So staff person should make it clear in the very next meeting of that particular commission.
yeah, we can have a staff update about this and also send an email to all of our commissioners with the reminder of each residency requirement for each commission, because some are different. They're not too different from each other, but there are a couple that, like, you have to be in the city, and then some you have to be in the UGA, so. Well, for each commission, we'll make it clear to that commission what those residency requirements are. And then if they do knowingly move outside of the area, then they need to notify staff that they're leaving and, give someone then else a chance to serve that's currently living in the city or in the UGA. Is that what you were, that your
Serve out
thoughts
the
were?
term,
Okay, okay, yeah. All right, so that person will serve out their term, and then any new people coming on will be very aware of the residency requirements, and then we'll update the commissions as well.
Is priority given to, like, if you had lots of applicants, to people who live in the city? only?
On some commissions, yes, it does specify that priority will be given to those that live in city limits, but if there aren't any applicants that are from city limits, that we would then look to the UGA.
Okay.
Does priority mean picking a person that has less credentials than someone that does have more credentials and lives outside?
Yeah, that's basically what it means. If a person lives, I mean, that for those specific commissions that say that, I think that is what it means, but it's still up for,
It's something that's weighed in the decision.
It's,
so
yeah, I
priority-
mean, if someone
priority
is
may be given, so.
totally not qualified, I wouldn't put an extremely qualified
Maybe.
person out of the running just because they don't, if it's coming right down to that, and someone just like doesn't care a whole lot to put much information in their application, or
Sure.
clearly doesn't look like they're going to be a good contributor to that commission, but they live in the city, I would still weigh that against the other people that applied and let you all know that as well for your feedback, so.
The code was also set up in such a way from a long time ago where we didn't have as many residents as we do now.
Yeah,
And we have a lot more city residents that are applying to be on our boards and commissions, which is great.
It is great.
yeah.
So it's becoming
Wonderful to
less
see.
and less of a, I guess, hot topic issue with boards and commissions.
Yeah,
And I think we owe that partially to council getting the word out
Mhm.
about boards and commissions. I think a lot more residents are applying.
Have we advertised the vacancy on the Arts Commission yet?
yes,
Okay.
okay, well, thank you, council, and thank you, Josh, for that update. And we'll go into our,
Sorry, one other.
Yep.
On boards and commissions, when will we be asking people to apply for the Historic Preservation Commission?
Pretty soon, we'll just have to figure out more logistics of it, but
Yeah.
it'll be on the code in probably 10 days or so.
Okay, thank you.
Alright. Okay, our flag display policy item will be, our city administrator, Katrina Knudsen.
Thank you, Mayor. And Josh, feel free to jump in as you see fit. So MRSC has guidance that municipalities should adopt a flag policy prior to flying any flag that is not noted on our federal or within federal or state law. There's requirements, and I appreciate Councilman Rodenberg checking in on Flag Day, which was
Yesterday.
Yesterday, to ensure that we were flying the POW flag underneath the American flag, which I'm happy to say that we were. So thank you, Josh and Marty, for ensuring that that happens. So after your discussion on Monday, Josh put together this memo. I think that you've all read that, but we intend to, and think it's the best course of action for the city to formally adopt the flag policy by ordinance. Right now, there's a couple of things that were done. For instance, the Puyallup flag, I believe we have a policy. I don't recall if that went through council or not, but that it's to be flown in October and November. That is not with any formal policy directive. And so that does increase the city's liability when we allow some flags to be flown and not others without a formal policy, noting that there are let's say there's really flags within this country that we probably would want to see flown. And if somebody wants that to be flown in the chambers, we have a very hard time as a city saying no to this because we said yes to other flags, if that makes sense. It's been a long day, so I appreciate you bearing with me on this. And so Josh has crafted a draft chapter 1.22, and what we've done here is looked at anything, looked at the law, as well as anything that we had on the books already, and also with your direction from Monday regarding the pride flag. So you'll note here that we have the intent, also the time and occasions for display. And let's see. I believe the only two flags that we have allowed in here, and again, this is based on other previous practice for the Puyallup Tribe of Indians flag, as well as direction from council and pride flag on Monday, would be that the pride flag should be displayed on the station in the council chambers during the month of June. And then the Puyallup Tribe of Indians flag shall be displayed on a station in the council chambers during the months of October and November. And so with that, this is not necessarily a recommendation from staff, but we do recommend that the council consider this, consider each other's feedback, and work to provide direction to staff on an ordinance to bring forward so that we may have formal flag policy. Councilor Rodenberg.
I would like council to consider the fact that we say we're a welcoming city, and we're putting both of those flags in our council chambers to be inclusionary. However, we're excluding every other person that has a flag. So instead of inclusion, it's exclusion. For instance, Law Enforcement Week in May. Do we not want to fly the blue line flag? It shows support of our law enforcement. And are there other people that we don't? So I hate to just put two people, two different organizations or tribe in a group to fly their flag when we don't allow other people. So I think it's exclusionary, not inclusionary. I think we ought to have the ability to fly other flags of importance on days of importance.
Thank you, Councilmember Wood.
Thank you. I think that at the time that council voted to put the Puyallup flag on the dais. So that was a vote by council, and I don't know if it's a resolution. It was a resolution. I don't think that if we go forward with this ordinance, it doesn't exclude anybody. This is just saying we have a policy, and if we want to vote on these two things, I mean, the Puyallup flag has already been voted on, my way of thinking, but if we're gonna have this, I'm in favor of this ordinance, I'd like to see it go forward.
Don't get me wrong, I think both those flags should be flown. I do. I don't think we should exclude other people as well, though.
Councilor Likens.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we should certainly, have an open discussion if that, we can always amend the ordinance if it's important to have the blue line flag and fly it during, those are additional flags. Because looking at some of the examples, they do have different flags. Another flag I've seen in other ordinances are sister city flags that they fly when the sister city is visiting. So I certainly think that we could consider, I think the key point, when I looked at the research on this last year, looking at a pride flag, is that we make sure it's something that is voted on as an amendment to a flag ordinance, as opposed to just a random choice, because from that Supreme Court ruling, that's where it gets tricky for the city. So, and that's why I sent out the information from MRSC that we had talked about, just because this is how, after that ruling last July, is the best way to, kind of codify and say, this is what we support. But I certainly would be open to having other things. The only thing I was gonna say is, I think it's great to have it in council chambers. But to me, if we want to put certain flags up, it would be great if we had them somewhere outside in the city, because not everybody comes inside council chambers. And I think it would be great for certain events, for welcoming and doing training. That's up for discussion. I certainly, would like to see this pass. But I would almost rather see that outside somewhere, so that people driving by who are coming into the area can say this is a welcome. For whatever cost. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson.
Oh, Councilmember Barber was there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I said that.
Because you had your hand up.
I wrote your number down. I'll switch you. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Councilmember Henderson. I agree with Councilmember Lycan, since we're being formal. I would like for there to be a way that we can display, I'll call it a secondary flag, kind of a pride flag or a POW flag or a blue line flag, whatever ends up in the policy for that month. But maybe it's outside here, we have the flags that we have now, and we add another pole that allows us to commemorate another group. In addition to in chambers, because I don't think that most community members come into chambers.
If we're looking, if we're looking at a separate flagpole outside, just briefly talking with staff, there's some other adjustments out front that staff would like to make. Some picnic tables for staff to go eat out there when lunch.
Like today.
Like today.
Wouldn't that be
So
cool?
if we do want to look at another flagpole, that would be something that we would need to have direction on, and it would need to go on the work program, and we need to see when that could happen. So as we're considering this, I would just ask council to consider, there's lots of stuff going on, as we've heard from staff.
Yeah.
So, perhaps there's an inside, and then once there's additional capacity outside, then we go outside.
Yeah.
I know that staff really wants to work on that. They need to put together a minor site plan application, some additional
The later permit.
permeable
Yeah,
pavement or impervious area, so for the additional picnic tables. But this can be easily incorporated into that, is what I'm trying to say, so that we can have capability outside.
Picture is so cool up there.
Councilmember Henderson.
I support the extra flagpole, that would be good. One question, have we checked with the Puyallup tribe at all about where they want their flag flown, or is it, that's already been covered with just what we've done before in the past?
It's by resolution.
Okay,
We have not asked, but we could easily ask them. What I recall from that discussion is they wanted it inside because that's where the action of the body was taken.
okay.
So,
I asked them if we get another flagpole, which I hope we do, they would like that or not like that. Flown out there. I think the extra flagpole is a great idea. Gives us more flexibility.
Councilmember River.
Yeah, if we put another flagpole, I'm sure city will consider. There's federal laws about how high they are, where they stand, who's in the middle, who flies the highest, all that kind of thing. An unfortunate thing is the blue line flag has been weaponized to mean some people, some groups, minority groups who like to call it racist or show as a symbol of police brutality. And unfortunately, the rainbow flag has been done the same way by certain groups that don't agree with that. So, you know, we're asking a lot. I just saw yesterday, on the news, on MSN, that, there was a city council that actually broke into fisticuffs because they were voting to not fly the flag, and a group of pro people showed up, and in the hallway, there was a fight, and it was not a big town, it was, you know, a small town too. So let's be cautious about what we want to bring on ourselves. I think we can show support without inviting, trouble.
Councilmember Barber, did you have something?
I just think, I hear what you're saying. I think there's also a point in time where we have to do what is right. And we can use both of those flags as an example of doing what is right. But I think that this flag policy that staff has drafted is a good start. As we help staff build some picnic tables and put another flag and, you know.
So I'm excuse me.
That's okay.
Did you say you didn't think you'd rather see it without any flags than when we go to buy a particular flag, amend that ordinance? So we have to amend the ordinance every time?
No, I said, if there are flags that someone is passionate that should be flown a certain time, then we could do an amendment and get council to vote on. But the key is to get a council vote, at least from the research I've seen, is that you don't just choose, okay, this week we're gonna do this week we're gonna do that, that we actually get a vote of the body.
Yeah, I wish there was an easier way to do that, because we amend the ordinance, staff's gotta change the ordinance, change all the books, change everything. I wish there was some wording we could put in there where we could have, even if we had to do it every year, some kind of, something else, proclamation.
Is that a lot of work?
I think that's pretty much has to be the way it has to be. We have a donation policy, which is what things would default to if we didn't have this ordinance, and essentially the donation policy is that the mayor can accept donations, display them however the mayor can display them,
So somebody could donate a flag and she can display it any way she wants.
or not display it, and that is sort of a decision to do that, which, you know, mayor's mayor, they not like having that.
Good, I think that's a solution out there.
Well,
Well,
However, you.
Yeah. The church is saying, we'll see you tomorrow.
Exactly right. That's why this is a slippery slope, council. So
Yeah.
I just want you to know you're opening a door here, and I want you to be fully aware of the door you're opening. And then be prepared to possibly modify things if things,
Yeah,
if
there's gonna be,
things go bad and we have pickets around City Hall, or, you know, protests or whatever. I mean, just be expecting this, the climate in our world has changed so very much. And whether we agree with something or we don't agree with something, someone out there is always going to not agree or want us to get involved. And then the next day they're gonna say, no, government, don't get involved. And so it's just a weird, wacky world out there. So in my humble opinion, my personal opinion, the United States flag is supposed to encompass every resident of the United States of America, regardless of race, religion, creed, gender.
that's very.
It is the highest flag that does represent every people group. And those that have fought and died for our country didn't go into battle thinking, well, I'm only gonna die for this person, or I'm only gonna die for that person, I'm not gonna die for that person. That's not what they're thinking when they go into battle. They're fighting for everyone that lives in this country. And so I just ask you to consider that thought,
That's a good thought.
you know, because it is the most inclusionary flag for every person that lives in this nation. And so to me, flying that flag is including everyone. And when we start to add flags on here and there, no matter what flag they are, could be any religion, any group. Like, I kind of like what Councilor Rodenberg said before. It sort of does feel exclusionary if like, let's say someone does want to come and fly a Nazi flag. Do we want a Nazi flag flying from that third pole? No, but what is for them to say, well, you allowed this flag, you allowed that flag. why aren't you allowing my flag? And even though this would make it legal for us to only fly these two specific flags, you're still gonna get that pushback from multiple groups, I think, potentially. I'm not future forecasting, I'm just saying you could potentially get pushback from a lot of other groups that would say the same thing, that this is being exclusionary and not inclusionary. That's just my thoughts. I never hardly ever give them, but I wanted to on this one, so.
It kind of reminds me of the crutch display at Christmas, that, who was that, the outstate group threatened to sue us.
Oh, the nativity scene.
Yeah, the nativity
Debacle
scene.
and all that, yeah.
You know, and they just threatened to sue us, and they were out of state.
Mhm.
So now we have a menorah, we have a Koresh, we have every other thing, but that was a group that all they like to do is sue.
Yeah.
And we had to defend it, so.
Yeah. Councilor Wood?
Yeah, so when we did this with the Puyallup tribe, there was all this consternation about Puyallup tribe and not including everybody else, and you know what? Nothing came of it, and so the Puyallup tribe has been welcomed, the tribe flag has been welcomed, and all the talk about it came to nothing. And so, so I think it is, I'm still in favor of this ordinance, and hopefully there'll be a time that we can add a flagpole outside, if that's the vote of the council and the will of the council, so certainly it's my thoughts.
Councilor Luckin?
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's comments. I appreciate people being candid. I appreciate people just putting their opinions out there, everybody. I do support this ordinance, and the reason being is that I feel like in divisive times, if we come out in support of both, for example, the blue line and the pride flag, we're showing that we're welcoming to all. And I think that in these divisive times, I think sometimes it does take a little bit of old measure, and I'm okay with that. Is it a growing pain? Is it potentially something we need to reevaluate? You know, I'm fine with it being up on the DS to start with and not have a flagpole, all of that. I just would like to see it something that's voted on, just so you're more legally protected.
Yeah.
There's a reason I left it when we were talking about the ordinance last year, is that this case hadn't been decided, and I didn't want exactly what you described future happening. So might there be little blips here and there? Absolutely. But I feel like we need to rise above and just say, this is the right thing to do.
May I ask clarification? So with this, as we proposed it at the dais, and that is because of our flagpole
Yeah.
limitations.
Yeah.
So would it be, so it's 6 o'clock, I'm sorry.
Oh,
So we can go
okay.
forward with this, I'm just saying, I'm tired, but, moving forward with it being at the dais, or with these proposing being at the dais, and then we can come back and amend the ordinance when, if we're able to get flag poles outside.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilor Henderson.
So one thing I'd like you to add, if possible, we've been talking about other flag inclusion or exclusion. The Lacey resolution number 11120, I don't know if you saw that from the MSRC site, they had a statement in there that said city flagpoles are an expression of government speech and not a limited public forum. I think it'd be good to have that in our, just as a preface, because that,
Yeah, you definitely want that language in.
then it would be, it puts it on us, it's a city thing, not, well, you're not giving me my rights to put my whatever flag.
We will need that in there.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's in the
It's
Lacey
in the
thing, it's.
police, yeah.
Okay, and then, oh, sorry.
To that point, in the Bellingham one that was in MSRC, they have a paragraph, the mayor may order display of the commemorative flag of any recognized sister city of the city of Gig Harbor to be flown during official visits of representatives of the sister city, provided that city council is not authorized another commemorative flag for the same period of time. I think it would, that kind of gets to that sister city official relationship kind of thing. If we can add that for the dais as well.
But I don't think that should kick another flag off the dais.
No, it wouldn't kick a
It
flag
wouldn't
off.
kick it off.
It's like if the mayor of Buda comes to
Right.
visit and we want to put a Norwegian flag,
Right.
like hang it in front of council chambers, it wouldn't be on a stanchion. It would be like, we would display it more like
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
that's
as for an
Yeah,
event.
that's
type-
wonderful.
type of a thing.
Yeah,
That's
wonderful.
great.
But whatever's there stays there.
Yes, whatever
Yeah,
is
yeah,
out there.
Yeah.
yeah.
It would just,
Yeah.
it would be in addition to whatever is
Yes,
currently
right,
displayed.
Yes,
But I
yes.
would like to see that paragraph added to.
That would be good, probably since we
Ordinance.
have now two officially signed
Yeah,
Mhm.
sister city
yeah,
agreements.
I like that.
Good.
I just I wanna thank Josh, for quickly acting.
Yes,
On
Thank you,
the,
Josh.
very much.
getting this forward, we knew that it was important to council, so wanna shout out Josh's good work.
Okay, well, we are at 6:01 and we
I
need to
make
be.
one quick call.
For that guy.
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thanks.